Chapter 31, Sirius and Snape. The last day of vacation had finally arrived. Harry, who was staying at 12 Grimmauld Place, couldn't have been happier, if not for the troubling dream that had been haunting him. There was another reason for his unease, but it hadn't made itself known yet. In Harry and Ron's bedroom, the two were deeply engrossed in a game of wizard chess, with Ginny and Crookshanks spectating. The room was filled with the clashing of Harry's enchanted knight against Ron's pawns, Harry cheering on his piece with fervent excitement. "Harry, dear," Mrs. Weasley's voice interrupted, her head peeking through the door. "Could you come to the kitchen, please? Professor Snape has something to discuss with you." At the mention of Snape, Harry's initial happiness was doused with a cold sense of dread, confusion clouding his thoughts. "Professor Snape is in the kitchen and wishes to speak with you," Mrs. Weasley reiterated. Harry's reaction was one of sheer horror, his mouth agape as he exchanged bewildered looks with his friends. "Snape?" he echoed, perplexed. The thought of Snape seeking him out was baffling, and despite Mrs. Weasley's urging, he lingered, trying to fathom what he might have done to warrant such a visit. Could it have been his less-than-stellar performance in potions? With a heavy heart, Harry made his way to the kitchen. Upon entering, he was greeted by the sight of Sirius and Snape seated at opposite ends of the long table, an air of mutual disdain hanging thickly between them. Sirius's glare was fierce, and Snape's expression was equally contemptuous. An open letter lay before Sirius, the tension in the room palpable. Snape's gaze, sharp beneath strands of greasy hair, fixed on Harry. "Sit down, Potter," he commanded in his usual sneering tone. Sirius, ever the protective godfather, immediately bristled at Snape's words. "This is my home, and you will not give orders here," he retorted, his voice booming. Ignoring Sirius's outburst, Snape continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "I'm here on Dumbledore's orders," he revealed, causing Sirius to halt his departure at the mention of Dumbledore's name. "The headmaster has requested that you, Potter, begin studying occlumency this term." Harry, puzzled, inquired about the nature of occlumency. Snape, with a sneer that seemed to grow even more pronounced, explained, "Occlumency is a branch of magic designed to shield one's mind from external intrusions. It's quite useful." The revelation sent Harry's heart racing. Was Dumbledore concerned about him being possessed? After discussing the matter with Ginny, who had her own harrowing experience with possession, Harry was convinced he wasn't under any external influence. Yet, the doubt lingered. "Why do I need to learn this?" Harry asked, his suspicion evident. "Because the headmaster deems it necessary," Snape replied, his tone slightly less harsh. "You will receive private lessons once a week, and this must remain confidential." Harry, trying to calm his racing thoughts, accepted the arrangement. "Who will be teaching me?" he asked, hoping for anyone but Snape. The smirk that then played on Snape's lips was telling. "I will," he announced, enjoying the shock his statement caused. At that moment, Harry felt as if the ground beneath him had given way. This had to be a mistake, a punishment for some unknown transgression. Desperate for support, he turned to Sirius, whose animosity towards Snape was no secret. Sirius, unable to contain his fury any longer, erupted. The tension in the room was palpable as Sirius Black confronted Severus Snape with suspicion and aggression. "Why can't Dumbledore teach him?" Sirius demanded, his protective instincts for his godson, Harry Potter, flaring up. He couldn't fathom why Snape, of all people, would be assigned to teach Harry, suspecting malice behind the decision. Snape, with a hint of amusement in his voice, replied smoothly, "I believe the headmaster has the prerogative to assign tasks as he sees fit, no matter how unpleasant they may be." His eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he observed Sirius's growing frustration. "As for why me, let's just say I'm the lesser of two evils in this case." The room fell silent as Snape delivered his ultimatum, setting the meeting for 6 o'clock on Monday night in his office. The option to switch instructors was dangled before Harry, only to be snatched away with the mention of John Wick as the alternative. Sirius's reaction to the name was visceral, a testament to the complicated history and the gravity of the situation. Harry, caught in the middle, found himself without a real choice. Snape's insinuation that only he or John Wick could teach this particular branch of magic at Hogwarts left Harry in a bind. Snape's parting words, a veiled threat about the dangers of not mastering the skill quickly, only added to the tension. Sirius, ever the protector, stood up to Snape, his anger boiling over. The exchange between them grew heated, with accusations and threats flying, until the arrival of Mr. Weasley and others diffused the situation. Snape's final warning to Harry about John Wick hinted at deeper, unspoken dangers, leaving Harry with more questions than answers. As the holiday came to an end, the return to Hogwarts brought its own set of dramas. John observed the social dynamics among his peers, noting the interactions with a detached curiosity. The incident with Daphne and Pansy in the foyer, Malfoy's transparent attempts to court Astoria Greengrass, and the unexpected arrival of an owl, intercepted by Basil, painted a vivid picture of life at Hogwarts. Each moment, from the mundane to the mysterious, wove together the complex tapestry of their world, filled with alliances, rivalries, and the ever-present shadow of the unknown. John watched with a mixture of amusement and surprise as the owl, initially protesting, was intimidated by Basil's stern gaze and quickly took flight. Carefully opening the letter, John's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. "That was quick," he remarked. The letter read, "Dear Mr. John Wick, you are cordially invited to attend the Wizengamot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on January 1st for a ceremony in your honor." John would be receiving an honor the following week. A smile played at the corners of his mouth as he tucked the letter away for safekeeping. Just then, he noticed Harry Potter approaching. Harry's steps were heavy, weighed down by some unseen burden. After exchanging brief greetings with Hermione, Harry departed. John's attention lingered on Harry's retreating figure, pondering the complexities of the young wizard's life. He then turned his thoughts back to the upcoming ceremony, curious about what accolades awaited him and how this new chapter of his life would unfold within the magical community. Chapter 322, Awards and Glory for Slytherin Mumming. It was Monday, and the Defense Against the Dark Arts class was in session. Professor Oz tested the students on the application of the impediment charm. "It appears you've mastered the basics of the disarming spell, the stun spell, and the impediment charm," he observed. It had taken Ozzy a semester to rectify the notably weak foundation of the fifth-year students. Though these spells are simple, their effective application can allow for a robust defense and even counterattack when under assault, Ozzy explained to his attentive students. Throughout his extensive career as an Auror, he found these 3 spells to be the most practical. In many situations, these spells prove more effective than their more complex counterparts, he added, emphasizing that for Aurors, the speed of spellcasting often outweighed the power of the spells themselves. This semester, Ozzy had introduced a new learning task focused on the application of spells, which particularly intrigued those students aspiring to become Aurors. Umbridge rarely visited this classroom, making it one of the last refuges for genuine learning. As the class concluded, the students eagerly discussed their new assignments. In the hall, Draco Malfoy grumbled about Harry Potter's seemingly arrogant demeanor during class. He had misinterpreted Harry's distracted look, assuming it stemmed from a sense of superiority. "He probably thinks he can master everything instantly because he's the savior," Draco complained, his frustration fueled by Harry's natural aptitude for defense against the dark arts, where he was second only to John. John, overhearing Draco, raised an eyebrow and remarked, "Perhaps if you spent more time studying instead of observing Potter, you'd improve as well." Draco was left speechless as Pansy Parkinson attempted to flee past him, still haunted by her failed attempt to avoid confrontation the previous day. Daphne Greengrass confronted Pansy with flushed cheeks, still embarrassed by her bold move of asking someone out. Pansy, looking miserable, promised to apologize later, but Daphne was not satisfied with her attitude. Pansy suggested that John's acceptance of the date indicated his interest in Daphne, a notion Daphne quickly dismissed. After a heated exchange, Daphne and Pansy reached an agreement, with Pansy left feeling humiliated and taking out her frustration on Goyle and Crabbe, who were bewildered by her anger. As the day of the awards ceremony approached, John found himself occasionally glancing at his badge, though he spent most of his time at the Star Club. On the 8th of the month, John entered Professor Snape's office, interrupting a secretive meeting between Snape and Harry, who were using the Pensieve. Harry looked mortified, as if caught in the act. "I hope I'm not interrupting your makeup lessons," John said, his tone laced with amusement. Snape, trying to block John's view, sternly reminded him of the courtesy of knocking. Harry's discomfort was palpable, highlighting the awkwardness of their situation. John Wick stood firmly in front of the door, locking eyes with Snape as he spoke deliberately. "There shouldn't be any wild dogs that have managed to infiltrate Hogwarts." "I did knock, but it seems you didn't hear me." John shifted his gaze away, a slight raise of his eyebrows betraying his thoughts. Was Snape attempting to delve into his mind? Thanks to his occlumency, John's thoughts remained his own. With a modest smile, he added, "I believe my reason is quite legitimate." Oh? Snape's skepticism was evident, yet he was unable to penetrate John's mental defenses. This only confirmed Dumbledore's assertions that John Wick possessed abilities that surpassed not only those of his peers, but also many seasoned wizards. "I would like to request a day off tomorrow," John proposed politely. "A holiday?" Snape mulled over the request, finding it peculiar given John's lack of explanation or apparent illness. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, he consented. Granted. The room fell into a stunned silence. Snape's unexpected acquiescence left Harry feeling as though he was witnessing a completely different person. John expressed his gratitude with a chuckle. "Thank you very much, Professor Snape." Harry was dumbfounded, recalling the harsh words John had previously exchanged with Snape at Grimmauld Place. He had been convinced that such insolence would have earned anyone else a strict punishment. As John made his way to the door, he paused, turning to Harry. "Yes, Harry." Harry instinctively looked up, their eyes meeting. Snape quickly positioned himself between them, a protective gesture that took John by surprise. Nonetheless, John remained composed, wishing Harry better results in your endeavors, before calmly exiting the room and gently closing the door behind him. Once John had departed, Snape faced Harry, his tone icy. "We can commence with a new practice." Harry was struck by a sudden realization. Snape didn't want him to interact with John. "Your mediocrity will only serve to highlight John Wick's exceptional talent. It would be best if you didn't embarrass yourself further." Harry's face fell. He had forgotten Snape's ability to read minds. His internal criticisms of Snape now laid bare. He braced himself for the professor's reaction. Snape's sneer was a clear indication of his disdain. "You've harbored plenty of negative thoughts about me in the past. Let's see how you handle this situation." In that moment, Harry found himself earnestly to mend fences with John. On the 9th day of the month, John Wick made his appearance at the Ministry of Magic. Approaching a red telephone booth in London, he dialed 62442 and was greeted by an indifferent voice instructing him to state his name and purpose. "John Wick, here for honors," he announced. After following the instructions to wear a badge marked awarded and registering his wand at the security checkpoint, the phone booth descended, transporting him to the underground Ministry of Magic. This wasn't John's first visit, but the occasion was markedly different from his previous ones. Upon entering the main hall, John was met with a solemn assembly, gathered for the ceremony. Buspa, who had taken a step back this time, allowed an elderly man with a white beard to lead the proceedings. "In recognition of your contributions to the wizarding world, it is my honor to award you the Merlin's second-class medal," the old man declared confidently. The ceremony, though simple, was significant. The purple medal, symbolizing the Merlin's second class, now adorned John's chest, marking him as the youngest recipient of the Merlin medal in the magical community. Journalists captured this historic moment, eager to share the tale of Hogwarts' rising star, John Wick. Percy was among the attendees, his pride in John evident. He had always believed that John Wick's brilliance would shine through, regardless of any external influences. At the Slytherin table, a sense of loss permeated the air. Their leader, John, was noticeably absent, and with him, the usual sense of unity seemed to have diminished. Malfoy, finding himself disinterested in the proceedings, barely noticed an owl flying overhead. As he casually opened the newspaper, his eyes suddenly widened in shock. "Read the newspaper," he exclaimed, his voice cutting through the silence of the auditorium. His outburst took everyone by surprise. Unperturbed by the attention, Malfoy cleared the clutter from the table with a swift motion and stepped onto it, holding the newspaper high for all to see. With the room's attention fixed on him, he began to read aloud. On January 1st, 1996, a new legend in the magical world was born. Hogwarts' own prodigy, John Wick, shattered the long-held belief that the blood curse was incurable, marking a significant breakthrough in the fight against it. He paused for effect before continuing. For this monumental achievement, he has been awarded the Merlin Second-Class Medal. A stunned silence enveloped the room at the revelation, quickly followed by an uproarious celebration from the Slytherin house. At that moment, their cheers dominated Hogwarts, their pride in their fellow housemate palpable. Malfoy, caught up in the fervor, waved the newspaper above his head and proclaimed, "Our king, bringing honor to Slytherin." The other houses remained in a stunned silence, the weight of the news slowly sinking in. Even Professor Umbridge, notorious for her strict control over the students, seemed to have forgotten to quell the sudden outburst of disorder. The announcement marked a pivotal moment, not just for Slytherin, but for the entire school, as they witnessed the rise of a new hero within their midst. Chapter 323, Mu Qiang and Mu Ming. The news that John had become the youngest recipient of the Merlin Medal in history for breaking an unsolvable blood curse left everyone at Hogwarts in a state of shock. It seemed surreal, as if the boundaries of reality had been stretched. Harry Potter, reflecting on his occlumency lesson with Professor Snape from the day before, couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. "To think I wished for my grades to improve," he said with a hint of bitterness. "With such an achievement, I doubt I'll ever catch up. John Wick truly deserves to be called the best." Professor Flitwick, too, was moved by John's accomplishment. "John Wick is undoubtedly the most exceptional student I've ever encountered," he remarked, never having imagined that a student could achieve such a feat, especially breaking a blood curse. Snape's expression was a complex mix of emotions, far beyond mere admiration. The news spread like wildfire throughout Hogwarts, reaching even the Bloody Baron at the Slytherin table. "I always knew this day would come," the Baron mused, recalling the first time he saw John during a night tour of the school. Initially, he had thought John was misplaced in Slytherin, given his fearless, adventurous spirit that seemed more fitting for Gryffindor. Now it was clear that John's achievements were adding glory to Slytherin, cementing his status as the true king of the house. Umbridge, attempting to quell the excitement in Slytherin with a scowl, was met with a surprise when a large dung bomb dropped from the ceiling directly onto her, releasing a stench so foul it nearly caused fainting. Peeves, the poltergeist, cackled with glee, declaring, "Salute to the King of Slytherin," as more dung bombs exploded, filling the entire Great Hall with their putrid smell. The students fled, leaving Professor McGonagall fuming with anger. However, the incident only fueled the admiration for Slytherin and John. Students from other houses joined in the cheers, acknowledging Slytherin's strength. Even the professors seemed to show leniency towards the students in light of the celebration. Ernie Macmillan boasted to Hannah Abbott about his foresight regarding John's potential, recalling how John had protected fellow students and fought a basilisk in his earlier years. Draco Malfoy, trying to assert his own foresight, was quickly humbled by a reminder of a past defeat, much to the amusement of the onlookers. Upon John's return, he was swarmed by his peers, lifted onto their shoulders in a triumphant procession back to the Slytherin common room. Admirers, particularly the girls, eagerly sought his autograph, though mysteriously, the pen vanished before it could reach John. Pansy Parkinson and Daphne Greengrass led the Slytherin girls in this adoration, with Daphne visibly moved by the gesture. Even Professor Trelawney, despite her usual inebriated state, congratulated John, claiming her third eye had foreseen his success. John thanked her politely, though he couldn't help but notice the strong smell of alcohol that seemed to follow her since her detention with Umbridge. The next day, John visited Hagrid's cabin, where the half-giant carefully examined the Merlin medal. "You're too powerful, John. I never imagined I'd know someone as remarkable as you," Hagrid said, his voice rough with emotion. Though Hagrid wasn't particularly fixated on the medal itself, he felt immense pride in John's achievement. Hagrid also prepared a special gift for John, a collection of precious materials from the creatures of the Forbidden Forest, showcasing his deep affection and admiration for his friend. In the depths of the forest, John graciously accepted Hagrid's gratitude, simultaneously tending to a fresh wound with a flick of his wand. "Next time you're injured, you can reach out to me directly," John mentioned, a frown creasing his brow. "We're friends, Hagrid." Hagrid couldn't help but chuckle in admiration of John's magical prowess. "Your skills might just rival those of the professors," he remarked, genuinely impressed. Healing spells that would take Madame Pomfrey some time to perform seemed to be mere child's play for John. After their exchange, John ventured further into the forest to visit the Thestrals. The young one he had met previously had grown significantly, though it still harbored a cautious fear of the Zulu, which kept it from wandering too freely. Securing the Medal of Merlin in his bag, John's next stop was the unicorn colony. He was on a quest for unicorn horns among other materials. The unicorns, especially Wei Wei, greeted him with visible joy. It had become an unspoken agreement between them. John would bring the stars, and in return, the unicorns would offer their horns. Clark, too, was mesmerized by the golden liquor John had brought. "This is the finest liquor I've ever tasted," he exclaimed, noting how the magical essence within it seemed to invigorate the unicorns. John had prepared 3 bottles, sharing one on the spot, while Clark discreetly stashed away the other 2, wary of the younger, more covetous unicorns. With some negotiation, John was allowed to collect a few unicorn horns hidden within a tree hollow and even pick leaves from a significant tree to the unicorns, all in exchange for the stars he provided. Upon leaving the unicorn colony, John encountered a centaur who brusquely demanded he and Hagrid leave the Forbidden Forest. John's response was icy, his gaze intimidating as he corrected the centaur. "This is not solely your forest, but ours as well." The confrontation escalated quickly, with the centaurs drawing their bows, only to lower them as John demonstrated his formidable power without causing harm, a clear warning to them. John's stern warning to the centaurs about protecting Hagrid was a testament to his resolve. He left the forest with a clear message. Any threat to his friends would be met with a swift and decisive response. Back at the castle, an unexpected letter arrived for John, not from Daphne, but from Mr. Greenglass. The peculiar nature of the correspondence left John with a sense of intrigue and bewilderment, akin to reaching out to Malfoy with a personal request. The letter, directly addressed to him, piqued his curiosity as he began to read, wondering what unexpected message it contained. Chapter 324, Mr. Greengrass and the Cursed Library. Daphne Greengrass leafed through the books with an air of forced calm, yet her frequent, anxious glances towards John betrayed her inner turmoil. Draco Malfoy, attempting to maintain a semblance of discretion, coughed twice and, shielding his face with a book, whispered to John, "John, don't you think you're being a bit too obvious?" John, taken aback, returned his gaze from Daphne to Malfoy, genuinely puzzled. "What do you mean?" he inquired. Malfoy, choosing his words carefully to avoid provoking any hostility, replied softly, "We're in a public space. Perhaps it's better to address this in private." He wanted to point out John's almost palpable fixation on Daphne, but recalling past confrontations, opted for a more diplomatic approach. No sooner had Malfoy finished his cautionary advice than John's attention shifted to Astoria, Daphne's younger sister. Malfoy, sensing potential trouble, quickly interjected, "John, I'd advise against spreading your attention too thinly." John shot Malfoy a glance, his expression one of mild amusement. "Feeling particularly bold today, are we? Have you completed all your homework, or perhaps you've finally outshone Harry in defense against the dark arts?" he teased, knowing well the sore spot he was pressing. Malfoy could only sigh in response, a look of resignation crossing his face as he contemplated the mountain of homework awaiting him, a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of happiness. Meanwhile, Astoria nudged her sister, her voice low and tinged with concern. "Sister, have you succeeded?" "Stop talking nonsense." Daphne quickly silenced her sister, her hand clamping over Astoria's mouth. A recent misunderstanding had left Daphne wary of being seen with John, and she wasn't eager to repeat the experience. Astoria, finding herself unable to escape her sister's surprisingly strong grip, resigned herself to her fate with a sigh. John, lost in thought, tapped his fingers on the table, the sound echoing his contemplation. The Greengrass family, he mused, recalling a letter he had received from Mr. Greengrass. The letter, though reluctantly penned, requested John's protection for his daughters, hinting at a curse that plagued the Greengrass matriarchy, a blood curse passed down to female descendants, threatening to cut their lives short before the age of 30. Daphne, already 15, was halfway through the cursed timeline. John realized the gravity of the situation. Further investigation was imperative. Unaware of the intensity of his gaze, Daphne felt increasingly uneasy under his scrutiny. Just then, John's badge vibrated slightly, snapping him out of his reverie. His expression shifted as he quickly reviewed the message, then hurriedly exited the library. This abrupt departure puzzled both Daphne and Malfoy. Malfoy, checking his own badge, turned to Daphne. "Did you get the message?" Daphne shook her head. "No." "Percy, perhaps?" Malfoy speculated. The group often communicated via group chat, with Percy occasionally sending messages individually. Fleur Delacour, though off campus, frequently shared her grievances about her Silver Hand Angel investment in the group, oblivious to her boss's presence. "It might be someone else," Daphne suggested, hinting at another ally outside school, Kim Lettisley. Though Kim rarely spoke, they were aware of his involvement in matters John preferred to keep them distanced from. The mystery deepened as they pondered the possibilities, their thoughts interrupted by the sudden urgency of the situation. Beneath the starlit sky of the Star Society, John found himself engrossed in a map sprawled before him. Several locations were marked, yet none revealed what he sought. His gaze settled on a particular point, the dilapidated ancestral home of Voldemort, nestled closest to the cemetery. With a thoughtful rub of his eyebrows, he dispatched a message to Jin, urging, "Do your best." The badge fell into a silent acquiescence, prompting a sigh from John. Voldemort's ambition was matched only by his nostalgia, a trait evident in his choice to hide the locket in a place from his childhood. To uncover the remaining Horcruxes, John deduced that investigating Voldemort's past haunts would be most effective. However, such a mission had to remain clandestine, especially from Voldemort himself. Horcruxes, with their formidable power, required a resolute will to resist their influence, making Kim an ideal candidate for the task. John divided the search into two fronts, internal and external. Internally, the focus was on Hogwarts, a place of significant influence on Voldemort. Given Voldemort's choice to use relics of Hogwarts founders as Horcrux vessels, the school was undoubtedly meaningful to him. The diary had been with the Malfoys, the cup in the Lestrange vault, and the locket in a seaside cave, suggesting that Hogwarts might harbor another Horcrux. Yet, the exact location within the school's mysterious and magical confines remained uncertain. "Neville, I hope you can find out," John mused, entrusting the task to Neville Longbottom. Neville, like Harry Potter, was a child of the prophecy capable of destroying a Horcrux. In the wizarding world, prophecies wielded a mysterious destiny, and John, gifted in prophecy himself, knew all too well the inescapable pull of destiny. Externally, John tasked Kim with tracing Voldemort's historical movements, knowing well that Voldemort would never risk placing all his Horcruxes in a single location. After organizing his workspace with a wave of his hand, John turned his attention to a cauldron before him, into which he added unicorn powder and a fluorescent leaf. The concoction churned with volatile magical energy, which John managed to stabilize after a moment of intense concentration. "There's a lot of magic in it," he noted, allowing the potion to simmer as he prepared another. Behind a concealed cabinet, he retrieved a bottle containing a pure white soul, which he combined with unicorn horn to create a soul potion. "Next, we need to understand the specific curse afflicting the Greengrass family," he pondered, recognizing the importance of safeguarding one's soul before confronting such a curse. Blood curses, akin to those affecting werewolves, were notoriously difficult to break, often acting as a slow poison on the body without causing physical deformity. "It is said to originate from the blood, but its essence lies within the soul," John reflected, holding the gently vibrating soul potion. He hesitated over the prospect of performing soul surgery, a procedure shrouded in mystery even to him. Mr. Greengrass had mentioned it as a possibility, and John knew that if it came to that, he needed to be thoroughly prepared. Unraveling a bloodborne curse demanded extensive research. I need to, he trailed off, setting his resolve for the challenges ahead. John exited the arsenal, his mind preoccupied with the contents of Mr. Greengrass's letter. It appeared that Daphne, his sister, was unaware of the blood curse that loomed over their family. This revelation prompted John to seek her out for a conversation, hoping to glean more information or perhaps to share the burden of knowledge. As he made his way through the dimly lit corridors of the ancient building, John couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. The Greengrass family, with its long and storied history within the wizarding world, was now facing a threat that could unravel the very fabric of their lineage. The blood curse, a malignant force passed down through generations, remained a closely guarded secret, one that Mr. Greengrass had entrusted to John in his letter. Upon finding Daphne, John noticed the look of surprise on her face. It was clear that she had not expected him to seek her out, especially not for a matter as grave as this. He took a moment to compose himself before speaking, choosing his words carefully to avoid alarming her unnecessarily. "Daphne," John began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I've come to talk to you about something important. It's about our family, about a secret that has been kept from you." Daphne's expression shifted from surprise to concern, her eyes searching John's for clues to the nature of this secret. She nodded, signaling for him to continue, her curiosity piqued and a sense of foreboding settling in her heart. John proceeded to explain the situation, omitting no detail about the blood curse and its implications for the Greengrass family. He watched as Daphne absorbed the information, her initial shock giving way to a resolve that he had come to admire in her. Together, they discussed potential ways to address the curse, their conversation marked by a newfound determination to confront the challenges that lay ahead. As they parted ways, John felt a sense of camaraderie with Daphne that had been absent before. They were no longer just siblings. They were allies in a fight against an unseen enemy, bound by blood and a shared destiny. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but John knew that together they stood a chance against the curse that threatened to destroy their family. Chapter 325, The Challenge of Secrecy. Hagrid was particularly sensitive about certain matters. Following Professor Umbridge's inspections of various teachers' classes, her scrutiny eventually landed on Hagrid and Professor Trelawney. Despite Umbridge's unpleasant demeanor, her ability to identify weaknesses was uncannily accurate. Among all the staff at Hogwarts, she pinpointed the only two whose teaching standards were arguably lacking. This scrutiny made Hagrid exceedingly anxious during his lessons. His anxiety often led to mistakes, which in turn heightened his nervousness, a vicious cycle. The mere sight of Umbridge filled him with dread as he envisioned his imminent dismissal. His fears were not unfounded, especially after the incident where Peeves bombarded Umbridge with dung eggs, exacerbating her fury. Her failed attempt to have Dumbledore expel Peeves only deepened her disdain for those associated with Dumbledore, including Hagrid. Given Umbridge's harsh grading, it was evident to John that Hagrid's evaluation score was perilously low. A passing grade seemed out of reach. Post-class, Hagrid appeared despondent, drowning his sorrows in wine from a vessel as large as a small barrel. Despite Sanxiaoji's attempts to console him, Hagrid urged them not to visit after dark, fearing for their safety. Overwhelmed by the prospect of losing his position, Hagrid couldn't hold back his tears. John found Hagrid lamenting about the Ministry of Magic, narrowly saving a wine glass from shattering on the floor. Yaya, sensing John's presence, eagerly approached him. After attending to Fang's needs, John noticed the suit of armor he had gifted Hagrid, now prominently displayed. "Why are you here?" Hagrid slurred, barely able to stand. "You forgot to feed the Thestrals today," John replied, trying to reassure him. However, Hagrid was too inebriated to maintain his balance, forcing John to leave him to his rest. Outside, Daphne awaited anxiously. The strong scent of alcohol wafting from the hut did not escape her notice. "What are we doing here?" she inquired, her voice betraying a mix of curiosity and apprehension. John, sensing her discomfort, led her towards the forbidden forest, explaining it was not convenient to discuss matters at the Star Club. Daphne's heart raced with a mix of nervousness and anticipation as they ventured deeper into the forest, eventually arriving at the former spider cave where Sirius had once been imprisoned. John cast a shielding spell on the door, heightening the sense of isolation. Daphne, caught in the throes of youthful imagination, felt a rush of emotions. "Daphne, I have something to tell you," John began, his tone serious. The scent of lavender from Riddle's potion filled the air, adding to the intensity of the moment. "This matter is very important," he continued. "It's also about your sister." Daphne's attention sharpened instantly, her previous thoughts vanishing as she braced herself for what John was about to reveal. The blood on Daphne's face quickly faded as she spoke in disbelief. "Don't you like—" Before she could finish, John interrupted with a question. "Do you know about the curse of blood?" After a moment, he seemed to realize what Daphne had just said and looked at her with suspicion. "What did you say?" "It's nothing." Daphne quickly recovered, her cheeks regaining color as she deftly changed the subject with a smile. "What is the blood curse?" John explained. "It's a curse inherited within a family, similar to the blood curse." He was momentarily puzzled by Daphne's rapid change of expression, but decided that unraveling the mystery of the blood-borne curse was more pressing. "I need to conduct an examination, which might be quite involved," he said earnestly. "I'm willing," Daphne responded, locking eyes with John. She quickly seized the opportunity to ask, "Do you think I might be cursed?" "Both you and Astoria could be," John replied gravely. "The curse seems to stem from your mother's side. It's a latent curse, and it's imperative we address it as soon as possible." "What should I do?" Daphne looked around, realizing that John had chosen this location instead of the Star Club, indicating the need for privacy away from Hogwarts. "Is there any specific procedure for the examination?" she wondered, a blush creeping onto her cheeks. John, noticing her agreement, approached with a smile. Under Daphne's watchful gaze, he drew his wand. "I need a small sample of your blood, and for you to lower your defenses." "Is that all?" Daphne asked, a hint of suspicion in her voice. "What else were you expecting?" John asked, genuinely puzzled. "Why did you choose to meet here?" Daphne pressed, seeking clarity. John answered without hesitation. "It's secluded here, free from interruptions. While the Star Club could have worked, this matter involves the Greengrass family's secrets." He wanted to consider Daphne's feelings, recognizing the curse as a sensitive family issue. A flicker of disappointment crossed Daphne's eyes, but John proceeded with the examination. He took a drop of her blood, searching for the curse. The blood quickly dried in his palm, its vitality seemingly drained away. Daphne felt a slight discomfort, as if her energy was being sapped. John's expression turned grave. "The curse of blood," he muttered. Suddenly, Daphne felt her consciousness detach from her body, entering an out-of-body state that left her amazed. She looked down to see her body lying motionless, as her soul was laid bare before John. John's complexion darkened upon realizing the curse was embedded in the soul. "Soul surgery. No, no," he murmured. The curse's attachment to the soul meant that only a complex soul surgery could potentially cure it, requiring thorough preparation. "The curse seems dormant, merging almost completely with the soul," John explained after a moment of contemplation. "It's best to wait until the curse becomes active before attempting soul surgery. Unfortunately, it's unpredictable when that might happen." Daphne's heart sank at the news of the curse's existence. "What about Astoria?" she asked urgently, concerned for her sister. "She also needs to be examined, but it's likely she's cursed as well," John admitted, suspecting that the curse wasn't just a matter of chance, but a certainty that had yet to manifest. A few days later, Astoria underwent the same examination, revealing the grim reality that the curse indeed affected both sisters. John was under a curse, one that had slowly begun to awaken. The soul potion he had previously prepared was now useless. Designed to heal the soul, it would only strengthen the curse that was intertwined with it. Desperate for a solution, John spent days buried in books and research papers, searching for a method to remove the curse without damaging the soul. His absence had stretched to nearly a week, causing Umbridge's fury to mount. She was eager to find fault with him, but the influence of Slytherin House shielded him. After all, each student wielded a powerful backing, rendering Umbridge powerless. The professors, on the other hand, were hardly concerned, considering John's capabilities far beyond what was required for graduation. It was midnight when John found himself in the restricted section, his eyes scanning the shelves for texts on soul magic. Curses were a complex aspect of the wizarding world, with Gringotts even employing curse breakers to handle the dangers lurking within ancient tombs. Among all curses, the bloodborne curse was notoriously difficult to deal with. John sighed and set aside another book, his frown deepening. Curses, especially those as malignant as the bloodborne, required a nuanced understanding of both dark magic and soul magic. The restricted section of the library, with its ancient and dangerous tomes, seemed the most likely place to find a cure, yet each book seemed to lead him further into despair rather than providing the answers he sought. The silence of the library at night was punctuated only by the sound of turning pages and John's occasional sighs. He was well aware of the risks involved in delving into such dark subjects, but the urgency of his situation left him with no choice. The curse, if left unchecked, would not only endanger him, but could potentially have wider repercussions. John's determination was fueled by more than just self-preservation. He understood the responsibilities that came with his abilities and the expectations of those who stood behind him. Slytherin House, with its storied history and powerful alumni, had always been a source of both support and pressure. As the night wore on, John's search became more frantic. He knew that time was running out, both for him and for those who might be affected by the curse's full awakening. The thought of Umbridge exploiting his vulnerability only added to his urgency. Despite her lack of influence over him directly, she represented a threat to the stability he had worked so hard to maintain. In the depths of the restricted section, surrounded by the knowledge of centuries, John felt both the weight of his quest and the flicker of hope that the solution lay within these walls. The challenge was formidable, but so was his resolve. The bloodborne curse had met its match, and John was determined to emerge victorious. Chapter 326, The Mysterious Letter and ZZ Honeydukes. 2 months had passed, and life at Hogwarts seemed to continue in its usual rhythm. Malfoy persisted in his daily provocations towards Harry, the Quidditch Club remained active, and Dumbledore's army kept up their clandestine training sessions. Despite the semblance of normalcy, the atmosphere within Hogwarts had grown increasingly tense under Umbridge's stringent regulations, to the point where even the faculty preferred silence over conversation in the staff lounge. Professors McGonagall, Flitwick, and Sprout were seen discussing quietly in front of the spell classroom, a testament to the long-standing discomfort Umbridge had instilled in both students and staff alike. Dumbledore's absence only seemed to exacerbate the situation, a fact that John found to his advantage. Ozzy Hurd, visibly irritated, meandered through the corridors with a pack of cigarettes in hand, seeking a secluded spot to indulge his habit. He acknowledged the greetings from some students with a curt nod, his mind preoccupied. The upcoming trip to Hogsmeade on Valentine's Day brought to light the contrasting perspectives on love between Western and Eastern cultures. Hogwarts, with its lenient stance on young romance, starkly differed from the more conservative views of the Celestial dynasty. The school's open encouragement of such matters was evident in its lack of intervention during Lockhart's Valentine's Day confessions. Neville, meanwhile, encountered Luna on his way, her peculiar demeanor leaving him somewhat perplexed. "What are you holding?" he inquired, noting her distant gaze. "It's a sword," Neville replied, scratching his head as they walked together. His curiosity piqued, he asked, "Where are you headed?" Luna, bound by a promise of secrecy, offered no specific destination, leading Neville to hastily apologize for his perceived intrusion. Despite being the only one in his dormitory not to join Dumbledore's army, Neville felt a sense of camaraderie with Luna. Holding the sword of Marvolo, Neville ventured to the 8th floor, where Luna disappeared behind a door that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Intrigued, Neville approached the door, only to watch it vanish, leaving behind a solid wall. The red gemstone on the sword dimmed, prompting Neville to draw parallels to St. Mungo's. Though unsure of what he was searching for, Neville felt guided by an unseen force. Back in his dormitory, John found himself at an impasse in his research. Frustrated, he cleared his desk of parchments and sat in contemplation. This curse is unlike the blood curse. It's destructive, not devouring, he mused, examining his notes. Concerned about the severity of the situation, he sealed his findings in an envelope and entrusted it to Basil, his owl, to deliver to Alex Dharma. Seeking a change of scenery, John left his dormitory and wandered aimlessly through the castle. He passed the common room, where Malfoy, Goyle, and Crabbe were engaged in a game of gobstones. The game, notorious for its foul-smelling penalty, seemed to have claimed Goyle as its latest victim. John continued his stroll, eventually finding solace on the covered bridge. The tranquility of the location allowed him to clear his mind, a rare luxury in the bustling life of Hogwarts. Despite the challenges posed by Umbridge's presence, John appreciated the relative safety and academic progress the school offered. The classroom was unusually quiet, with few students opting for desertion. As John felt the moist wind caress his face on the covered bridge, he gazed down at the water below, reminiscing about his first year at Hogwarts when he had arrived by boat. "It feels like it's been ages," he mused, a fleeting shadow of weariness crossing his eyes. Suddenly, his reverie was interrupted by a barn owl gliding gracefully towards him. The owl perched on the handrail of the bridge and extended a letter to John. After completing its task, the owl soared into the sky, vanishing from sight. Puzzled by the absence of a signature, John mined the envelope. It was an unusual black, a color rarely chosen for sending letters. Ensuring it was free from curses or any magical traps, he cautiously opened it. Inside, he found a small card bearing a cryptic message, "Live to die." John's heart skipped a beat as he read the ominous words. With a flick of his wand, he cast a spell, Reveal, hoping to uncover any hidden messages. However, the card remained unchanged. Taking a deep breath to steady his trembling hands, John pondered over the sender's identity and their intentions. Despite the unsettling message, he decided to keep the card, tucking it into his pocket with a determined look. "There are some things worth attempting, even against all odds," he thought to himself. As he stood lost in thought, the serene moment was broken by the enchanting sound of fairy music. A phoenix appeared before him, carrying another envelope. Dumbledore, John realized instantly. There was only one person who could command such a majestic creature. A mix of anticipation and apprehension filled him as he opened the letter. "I hope we can meet. The password is ZZ Honey Candy," the letter read, an invitation from Dumbledore himself. John exchanged a knowing glance with the Phoenix, who seemed to await his response. With a light smile, he accepted. Why not? The Phoenix, satisfied with his answer, took flight, leaving behind a single feather in John's hand. As he made his way to the principal's office, John reflected on Dumbledore's timing. He had anticipated this meeting, especially with Christmas approaching. Upon reaching the 5th floor, he uttered the password, ZZ Honey Candy, to the stone beast guarding the entrance, which promptly moved aside to reveal a hidden passage. Ascending the spiral staircase, John arrived at the principal's office. He was greeted by the portraits of former headmasters, including Phineas Nigellus Black, who expressed pride in John's achievements as a Slytherin. Dumbledore, seated behind his desk with Fawkes perched nearby, welcomed John warmly. "Please, sit down. It's been a while since your last visit," Dumbledore said, his voice filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. John's last visit had been an attempt to steal the Time Turner, a mission that ended in failure. Despite this, Dumbledore had shown him mercy, a gesture that John found both baffling and infuriating. As he took a seat, his eyes caught sight of an object on Dumbledore's desk, sparking a mix of emotions. Dumbledore, observing John's reactions closely, initiated a conversation. "I think we should talk," he began, his tone gentle yet firm. "This isn't a discussion between a principal and his student, nor is it between elders, but a dialogue between equals, between friends." His words were laden with sincerity and goodwill, inviting John to open up and engage in a meaningful exchange. Dumbledore's face, already marked by the passage of time, seemed to age further in the moment. In an attempt to lighten the mood, he quipped, "Valentine's Day is approaching. While the school hasn't officially endorsed it, we certainly don't discourage students from exploring romance." With a mischievous twinkle in his eye, he added, "I imagine your drawer must be nearly overflowing with love letters by now." John responded with unflinching calm. "I appreciate your concern," he said, his expression unchanged. "I suspect you once found yourself similarly inundated with admirers." Perhaps, Dumbledore replied, unabashed. Realizing the topic of adolescent romance might have been a misstep, he shifted the conversation to a more serious matter. He looked at John intently, his tone softening. John, have you uncovered any secrets concerning Voldemort? John, feigning surprise, glanced briefly at a silver instrument on the desk. What do you mean? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Dumbledore's gaze turned reflective. Do you recall our previous conversation? I mentioned you were a Slytherin, he said, pausing for a moment before continuing. However, I've come to realize I may have been mistaken. He studied John, a hint of regret in his voice. You're not merely a Slytherin, you also possess qualities befitting a Gryffindor. Standing, Dumbledore bowed his head in a rare gesture of humility. I must apologize. My oversight has led to unfair treatment of a student who deserved better. John's expression shifted through a range of emotions, from shock to contemplation, as Dumbledore acknowledged his mistake. The headmaster pushed a golden hourglass across the table, its chain scraping against the wood with a jarring sound. Magic isn't the sole measure of a person, John, Dumbledore said earnestly, presenting the time-turner that John had once sought covertly. You are fundamentally different from Voldemort. You possess the most potent and mysterious force in the world, love. John gazed at the time-turner, his smile tinged with bitterness. He touched the device, feeling its reality in his hand, and took a deep breath to steady his emotions. Dumbledore, John said, locking eyes with the headmaster, do you have any regrets? Before Dumbledore could respond, John answered his own question. Unfortunately, I harbor no regrets, he said, his grin sharp, because I am a Slytherin, and I seek vengeance. As his words hung in the air, a flurry of owls burst into the office, each carrying a letter. Dumbledore, selecting one, opened it and read. When he looked up at John, his expression was one of utter disbelief. The Gringotts explosion, he murmured, the weight of the revelation settling between them. Chapter 327, The Gringotts Explosion and the Escape of the Dragon. In the dimly lit corridors of Gringotts, Griffook led the way with a palpable sense of nervousness. Behind him, 3 figures followed closely, their presence akin to shadows in the flickering torchlight. Griffook clutched a small, jingling object tightly in his hand, its sound seemingly warding off the gaze of the guards, whose eyes shimmered like Australian opals, wary of approaching too closely. They arrived at the Lestrange vault, where Griffook hesitated before extending his finger towards the door. Hurry up and open it, a hostile voice demanded. Suddenly, Griffook was struck by a red light, eliciting a scream of pain from him. Calm down, Bellatrix, Amicus Caro intervened, attempting to pacify the enraged woman. Bellatrix, with her resemblance to Narcissa, exuded an aura of madness intensified by her decade-long imprisonment in Azkaban. Her madness was palpable, and when she turned her wand on Amicus, her voice was laced with fury. Shut up, it's not your place to instruct me. Amicus, struggling to contain his anger, responded coldly. Remember, we're doing this for the Dark Lord. If it weren't for your insistence on checking. I need to verify that it's still there, Bellatrix interjected, her loyalty to Voldemort overriding any other consideration. Her thoughts then drifted to a troubling memory, her expression darkening. That boy, he stole my sword. Her demand for the vault to be opened was more frantic this time, driven by a mix of fear and urgency. Griffook, caught in the midst of these Azkaban escapees, feared the worst. He remembered a previous encounter with a young man from the Lestrange family and felt a premonition of doom. As the vault's door finally creaked open, Bellatrix shoved Griffook aside and entered first, confident in her immunity to the curses protecting her belongings. Don't follow me, she warned her companions, who hesitated at the threshold. Inside, Bellatrix's worst fears were confirmed. The sword of Gryffindor, which should have been there, was missing. The realization hit her like a physical blow, and she staggered back, her mind racing back to a day she wished to forget. She had intended to visit her old victims, the Longbottoms, only to find them not only sane, but defiant. And there, among them, was Harry Potter, the boy with the lightning scar, the one who had defeated the Dark Lord. In that moment, Bellatrix's resolve to kill Potter was overshadowed by a greater fear. She had seen Neville Longbottom holding the sword, a symbol of her failure. The thought of losing Voldemort's favor terrified her more than anything. Desperate to ensure that another of Voldemort's precious items was still secure, she had risked everything to come to Gringotts herself, trusting no one else to confirm its safety. Ignoring the protests of her companions, Bellatrix climbed the towering shelves with a single-minded determination, her eyes fixed on a golden cup perched high above. Finally reaching it, she cradled the cup in her hands, whispering, "Dark Lord," her voice filled with a mix of obsession and reverence. But as she inspected the cup more closely, her expression froze. A line of words etched into the cup caught her eye. "Do you like the gift I gave you?" In an instant, the cup grew unbearably hot, and a blinding light filled the vault. The explosion that followed was not just a physical upheaval, but a symbol of the chaos that had infiltrated the very heart of Voldemort's legacy. As the light receded, the fate of Bellatrix and the secrets she so desperately sought to protect hung in the balance, a testament to the unpredictable nature of magic and the lengths to which loyalty to the Dark Lord could drive even the most devoted of his followers. The scene outside Gringotts underwent a dramatic transformation. The Australian opali, previously restrained by chains, unleashed a powerful roar. A crack appeared in its bindings, and with a mighty struggle, the chains shattered. An explosive boom echoed as all the E-bombs, cleverly disguised as treasures within the vault, detonated simultaneously. The resulting chain reaction caused a massive explosion that overwhelmed everyone in the vicinity. In the aftermath, a blinding white light, followed by fire and smoke, engulfed Gringotts. A terrifying fissure split the mountain on which Gringotts stood, reaching its peak. Amidst the ruins, Bellatrix Lestrange, her body severely injured, had managed to cast a protective spell at the last moment. Despite her efforts, she was fatally wounded. Outside, Amicus Carrow suffered a grievous injury, losing an arm in the blast. Another Death Eater was caught directly in the explosion, his body torn apart beyond recognition. Griffook, having anticipated danger, sustained the least injuries, though he was still badly hurt by a falling boulder. Before Griffook could feel relief at his survival, the roar of the now freed Australian opali sent shivers down his spine. The dragon, seizing the opportunity created by the explosion, burst forth from the gaping hole left in Gringotts. As it took to the sky, it unleashed a torrent of dragon fire towards the bank, causing further chaos. The spectacle of a fire-breathing dragon emerging from Gringotts sent shockwaves through Diagon Alley, drawing the attention of the Ministry of Magic. A contingent of Aurors quickly arrived on the scene. Among the chaos, Amicus Carrow, less severely injured than Bellatrix, but still in agony, screamed in pain and desperation. His right hand was nearly obliterated, hanging by mere threads of skin. Frantically searching the debris for his wand, he was about to flee when his wand was suddenly snatched from his grasp. "I don't think we've seen each other for a while, Carrow," said Pierce, an Auror who had arrived with reinforcements. He quickly disarmed Amicus and covered his face with a handkerchief to block the dust. Surprised by the turn of events, Pierce realized he had stumbled upon not one, but two high-value targets. Approaching the severely burned figure in the ruins, Pierce recognized Bellatrix Lestrange, despite her injuries. "Bellatrix Lestrange," he greeted, noting her once beautiful features now marred by severe burns. Bellatrix's hoarse whisper of "Master" filled Pierce with dread. At that moment, the Dark Lord, Voldemort, appeared, his presence sending a wave of fear through Pierce. As Voldemort enveloped Bellatrix in his black robes and vanished into the sky, a massive fire snake, conjured from the ruins of Gringotts, began to wreak havoc. "Everyone, stop the fire snake!" Pierce commanded, rallying the Aurors. They launched a coordinated attack, their spells converging into a golden wall to block the fire snake's advance. Despite their efforts, the fire snake, a manifestation of Voldemort's formidable power, seemed unstoppable. Just as the situation grew dire, reinforcements arrived. Led by Tang Mi and a security team, they joined the Aurors, their combined spells finally managing to contain the fire snake. Together, they fought to protect Diagon Alley from further destruction, showcasing the resilience and unity of the wizarding community in the face of darkness. The flames were temporarily subdued. Old Barty arrived on the scene, promptly dispersing the goblins who protested that the Ministry of Magic had no jurisdiction over the private vaults of Gringotts. The newly appointed Minister of Magic, burdened with the weight of his responsibilities, had been losing sleep for over a month. Dark circles marred his eyes as he conjured the water prison charm, summoning a magical waterfall within Gringotts to encase and extinguish the fire serpent. Thanks to the collective efforts of everyone present, the fire serpent was finally quelled. The sky had darkened, and both strikers and aurors established a secure perimeter. Voldemort, having departed, left Amicus behind, who was now handcuffed and under the watchful eyes of the aurors. Pierce cautiously approached the weary old Barty and whispered, "Sir, he has appeared." Old Barty's expression darkened further as he asked in a grave tone, "What caused this explosion?" Pierce relayed the information obtained from Griphook's interrogation. Bellatrix and other Azkaban escapees hijacked Griphook. Shortly after he opened the Lestrange vault, it exploded. He added, "There's more. The goblins are collectively protesting. They're displeased with the Ministry of Magic's intervention in Gringotts matters." "Humph, a bunch of greedy creatures," old Barty remarked disdainfully. "The appearance of the fire dragon from Gringotts has been witnessed by many. According to magical law, breeding fire dragons is illegal." Pierce's eyes sparkled with determination. As a minister, he knew he had to confront the issue head-on. "And the reporters?" he inquired. "Now is not the time," Barty Sr. responded cryptically. Understanding his superior's hint, Pierce excused himself to manage the inquisitive reporters. "Thank you for the assistance of the Silver Hand Johnny security team," Barty Sr. expressed his gratitude as he shook hands with Tang Mi, his demeanor slightly improving. In a subdued voice, he inquired, "Is the esteemed Silver Hand present?" Tang Mi maintained his composure, responding with a smile. "My lord has many preparations to attend to." Old Barty seemed to hesitate, wanting to inquire about his son, but ultimately refrained. "Kingsley, take a statement from the goblin," old Barty commanded the dark-skinned wizard. Kingsley, unfazed, had been eager to overhear the conversation, but, following his orders, made his way to Gringotts to negotiate with the obstinate goblins. Meanwhile, in the bustling crowd of Diagon Alley, some bystanders paused to observe the commotion. It was, after all, the middle of the day in an already lively place. Tonks and Lupin exchanged knowing looks from the outskirts, both curious about the unfolding events. Chapter 328, The Order of the Phoenix versus the Death Eaters. The sudden explosion had taken everyone in the Order of the Phoenix by surprise. Many of its members were employed by the Ministry of Magic, including Kingsley and Tonks, who were aurors. Mr. Weasley, not being part of the combat department, was out of the loop for the time being. Tonks, eager to join Pierce's team, found herself sidelined due to her junior status and thus missed Voldemort's appearance in the vault. Kingsley, with his higher rank and commendable conduct, maintained a respectful stance towards the minister. However, Pierce had departed in haste, only managing to inform Kingsley while he was in his office, leaving the order in the dark about the internal situation. The media, sensing a story, swarmed the scene like sharks drawn to blood, all vying for first-hand information. Pierce, acting as the spokesperson, stepped forward to manage the situation. He remained calm, knowing they had the situation under control and could spin the narrative to their advantage. This incident was orchestrated by fugitives from Azkaban. They hijacked Gringotts employees and infiltrated the bank to detonate the vault, causing significant chaos, Pierce explained. Thanks to the Auror's concerted efforts, we successfully apprehended Amicus Caro, who will face charges for his escape and involvement in this crime. Pierce continued, "The Ministry of Magic extends its gratitude to the security team of Johnny Silverhand's store for their assistance in maintaining order. The Ministry will ensure the injured receive proper care." He skillfully avoided mentioning the Death Eaters or Voldemort, focusing instead on Amicus's actions, painting him as a mere thief rather than a follower of the Dark Lord. The discovery of a second body, identified as another Azkaban escapee, alongside a fallen Auror, prompted the Ministry to provide financial support to the bereaved families, a gesture led by Barty Sr. himself. The Order of the Phoenix knew the situation was far from simple. Lupin, suspecting the Death Eaters' motives extended beyond mere theft, embarked on a mission to uncover their true intentions. Kingsley took charge of the investigation within Gringotts, while Lupin tracked a Death Eater who was tailing him. "Damn it, they've captured my brother," Electo Caro seethed, her anger palpable. Upon noticing Lupin, she snapped, "Who's there?" Lupin hadn't anticipated her vigilance. Capturing a Death Eater seemed the best way to unravel their plans. Without hesitation, he aimed to stun Alecto, but she was no stranger to combat. Their paths had crossed before, during numerous clashes between the Death Eaters and the Order. "It's you?" Alecto recognized Lupin, her expression turning icy as she launched a trio of spells. Lupin dodged the first, countered the second with an iron armor charm, and narrowly avoided the third, a deadly green curse, by using a flying charm to shield himself with a table. Alecto, wary of drawing more attention, attempted to apparate away, but Lupin was quick to act, disarming her with a curse. As her wand clattered to the ground, her spellcasting was abruptly halted. "Yield," Lupin commanded, wand aimed at Alecto. But before she could respond, the ground beneath Lupin gave way with a de primo spell, sending him tumbling into a newly formed pit amidst a series of explosions. Several Death Eaters emerged, seizing the opportunity to attack. Alecto retrieved her wand, and Travers prepared a lethal curse, only to be thwarted at the last moment. "There are obstacles. Impedimento." Tonks arrived just in time, with Moody close behind. His magical eye had spotted Lupin's predicament, leading them to his aid. Surrounded by the tense atmosphere, the Order of the Phoenix stood face to face with the Death Eaters. "Moody," Rodolphus Lestrange said with a grim smile, acknowledging the presence of his old adversary. "You were the one sent by the Order of the Phoenix back then," Moody retorted gruffly, his voice filled with suspicion. "What exactly are you plotting?" The Death Eaters, with fierce glares directed at the Order, were quick to express their anger. Rodolphus, unable to contain his fury, accused, "So it was you. You orchestrated this deliberately." Confused, Moody attempted to probe further, but before he could get any answers, the Death Eaters disappeared with a crack, having apparated away from the scene. Tonks, managing to pull Lupin out of a pit, exchanged puzzled looks with him. "What plan?" Lupin wondered aloud, his voice laced with confusion. Could the explosion have been the work of the Death Eaters? "We can't be certain," Moody replied, his voice gruff as ever. The scar on his face made him look more menacing in the dim light. "We'll need to consult Dumbledore first." At that moment, a dog emerged from the shadows, causing Lupin to call out, "Padfoot." The dog transformed back into Sirius Black, who complained about the tight security. The Aurors had the place so well guarded, not even a dog could slip through. "But I caught a familiar scent," Sirius said, his face twisted in hatred. "Bellatrix. It seems the lunatic wasn't caught, and the explosion seemed to target the Death Eaters." The group was filled with doubts and questions, but unfortunately, no answers were forthcoming. They decided to wait for Kingsley to extract a confession from the goblin involved. With that, they dispersed, careful not to draw attention to their close-knit group. After they had left, a door creaked open, and a man named Gauss stepped out, patting his chest in relief. "That was thrilling. Death Eaters and the Order of the Phoenix all in one place, and old Moody among them," he remarked with a malicious grin. Spotting a gnat on the ground, he picked it up and casually wiped it on his clothes. "My wealthy employer will be pleased to pay for this information," he mused, pocketing the gnat. A young man with an Asian appearance emerged from another door, his surprise evident. "Is this your idea of making a fortune?" Gauss looked at him with a sly smile. "Don't underestimate the situation. This is a big deal, and it'll bring in a substantial amount of galleons all at once. If you weren't interested in making more money to improve your brothers' lives, I wouldn't have involved you. The port keys we used to get here weren't cheap," he added, half complaining. The young man remained silent, recognizing this as a quick way to earn money without resorting to violence, simply by keeping an eye on these groups for their patron. "I'm a merciful wizard. I've never been one for violence," Gauss muttered as they made their way out. Meanwhile, Gringotts, located at the intersection of Nocturne Alley and Diagon Alley, had just experienced an explosion. Tang Mi, acting swiftly, arrived on the scene. His presence served a dual purpose, to assist and to fulfill his boss's orders. John had instructed that should anything happen at Gringotts, Tang Mi was to investigate immediately. The aftermath was significant. One Death Eater dead, another arrested with a severed hand, and a third rescued by Voldemort himself. The fact that Voldemort had appeared in person was a shock to Tang Mi, relayed to him by Pierce. Had the Ministry of Magic not arrived when they did, Pierce would likely have been killed. Walking the thin line between life and death, even the head of the Auror office couldn't help feeling a bit shaken. At least now, no one can claim your achievements as their own, Pierce remarked to Tang Mi as they headed to a bar in Nocturne Alley for a drink. The two men, one a subordinate of Johnny Silverhand and the other of Old Batty, found common ground in their shared responsibility for cleanup. Over drinks, Pierce, with a wry smile, admitted the motives behind the Death Eater's presence in Gringotts remain a mystery, as does the involvement of Griffook the Goblin. However, taking a sip of his wine, Pierce smiled cunningly. Sometimes the truth isn't what matters most. The public is more interested in identifying the perpetrator than understanding their motives. Getting Omion into Azkaban is what will satisfy them. Aurors are well aware of their recent achievements. In a remarkably short span, they have managed to capture 2 fugitives who had escaped from Azkaban. Counting the one found deceased, a total of 3 fugitives have been apprehended. To Pierce, the remaining 7 fugitives represent 7 golden opportunities. Capturing them could significantly accelerate his career progression, potentially paving the way for him to become the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. However, he is cognizant that this ambition hinges on Amelia vacating her position. "All right, it's time for me to leave," Pierce announced, setting down his glass. He then retrieved his wand, Garen, from his pocket. Tang Mi placed a hand on his and said with a warm smile, "Of course, the invitation was mine to extend." Pierce departed with a smile, his mind buzzing with the possibilities that lay ahead. Chapter 329, Bounty and Eye Teeth. Tang Mi placed 2 galleons on the table with a meaningful look and said to the waiter, "Money is indeed a powerful motivator." The waiter responded with a wide grin. Instead of leaving the bar, Tang Mi stood up and pushed open an oak door within the establishment. Inside, various colors of mist floated in the air, bursting into colorful clouds. The room was alive with loud music and filled with wizards of all sorts. Some were drinking heavily, others sipped their drinks quietly, and a few were engaged in heated arguments. The bartender, cleaning a wine glass, glanced up at Tang Mi. This place, with its vibrant atmosphere, was a stark contrast to the cleanliness outside. Tang Mi, with a gold coin in hand, casually flicked it towards the bartender, who caught it with a shrug and stepped aside. Tang Mi then picked up a silver spoon and tapped it against a crystal cup on the table, producing a clear, resonating ding-ding-ding. The loud music halted abruptly, and all eyes turned towards him. With a bright smile and a magic wand in hand, Tang Mi gestured towards the wanted notices on the huge blackboard behind him. As he waved his wand, the bounty amounts doubled. Turning to face the crowd, he saw their eyes gleam with greed and shouted, "Go and make your fortune." The bar erupted into chaos as wizards, each more desperate than the last, rushed out to hunt. These were no ordinary wizards. They were outlaws, accustomed to living on the edge. The promise of a bounty, especially one on a Death Eater, was too tempting to resist. They were like hungry wolves, eager for the scent of money. Only Johnny Silverhand, the notorious king of Nocturne Alley, could command such a dark assembly. Dumbledore's expression changed repeatedly, even with John standing before him. Letters from owls kept arriving, each bringing news that left him more astonished. The Gringotts explosion, the capture of Amicus, the movements of Death Eaters, Bellatrix Lestrange, and Voldemort himself. Dumbledore looked up at John, realizing that the student before him was behind these events. "John?" Dumbledore asked, his voice laden with complexity. "What have you done?" "I haven't done anything," John replied, twirling the Time Turner's golden chain around his fingers. "I've been focused on one thing only." John's calm gaze met Dumbledore's, which was filled with a mix of emotions. "You take it for granted, Dumbledore," he said quietly. "You assume all sacrifices are justified. You sent Hagrid to negotiate with the giants, forgetting he's not like you, devoid of your magical prowess. You see yourself as a paragon of justice, so virtuous that you disdain underhanded methods. But you forget, not everyone is Dumbledore. They're just ordinary people." Standing up, John's tone was indifferent. "Death Eaters plot, and so do I. They seek vengeance, and I reciprocate. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. John said with a grin. "That's always been my way, Professor." Dumbledore watched, speechless, as John stored the time-turner. With a salute and a smile, John said, "I hope you won't try to stop me," and left the principal's office. The bomb John had planted in the Lestrange vault had gone off, but not as he had hoped. It hadn't caught Voldemort. Tang Mi recounted the entire episode, causing John to rue his miscalculation. He hadn't expected Bellatrix to trigger it. He had set the trap, hoping to catch Voldemort by moving the golden cup. It seemed Bellatrix was aware of the cup's significance, which wasn't surprising given its location in the Lestrange vault and her connection to the family. "You didn't receive this gift, Tom, so wait for the next one," John mused, disappointed yet undeterred. Fortunately, the explosion had severely injured Bellatrix, and Pierce was credited with the achievement. The Daily Prophet's report on the incident was discussed in the auditorium the following morning, with many praising the Ministry of Magic's efficiency, a stark contrast to the previous occasions when its luck was questioned. In the wake of capturing an escaped Death Eater, the news of another fugitive's capture and a Death Eater's death in a significant explosion spread like wildfire. For those aware of the Order of the Phoenix and Voldemort's reign of terror, such news was met with a grim sense of satisfaction. "It would be best if all the Death Eaters met their end," Ron muttered under his breath. Meanwhile, Harry was grappling with the aftermath of Snape's invasive occlumency lessons, which left him looking and feeling worn out. Snape's approach, which involved forcefully breaching Harry's mental defenses, seemed to do more harm than good, leaving Harry feeling weaker and more vulnerable than before. The previous night's session had been particularly brutal, almost resulting in Harry being sent to the school hospital. Harry's frustration was compounded by a deep-seated anger towards Voldemort, which felt as personal as if Voldemort had stolen something invaluable from him. Upon reading the newspaper, Harry discovered the reason behind Voldemort's fury and also learned about Johnny Silverhand's security team's involvement. "Johnny Silverhand, yet again," Harry remarked, surprised. Since Barty Crouch Sr. had taken up the position of Minister of Magic, Johnny Silverhand's people had been frequently mentioned in the news, assisting in various capacities. Harry couldn't shake off the suspicion that Barty Sr. might be acting under Johnny Silverhand's orders, possibly due to a rivalry with Dumbledore over a prestigious title. However, he refrained from voicing this theory, knowing Hermione would dismiss it as ludicrous. Discussing his struggles with Snape's lessons, Hermione suggested that sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better, likening Harry's situation to recovering from a cold. Harry, however, was adamant that Snape's methods were exacerbating his condition, expressing his disdain for the mental and physical pain the lessons induced. Hermione, ever the voice of reason, reminded Harry that the purpose of these lessons was to prevent him from dreaming about a particular corridor, a task Dumbledore deemed crucial. Ron, ever the conspiracy theorist, speculated that Snape might not have Harry's best interests at heart, suggesting that Snape's true intention might be to make Harry more vulnerable to Voldemort's intrusions. Hermione, frustrated with Ron's unfounded suspicions, defended Snape, highlighting his allegiance to Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix. Despite her arguments, Ron remained skeptical of Snape's loyalty, citing his past as a Death Eater. Amidst this heated discussion, Harry's attention was drawn to the Slytherin table, where he inadvertently locked eyes with Malfoy. Misinterpreting Harry's gaze as a challenge, Malfoy responded with a hostile glare. Harry quickly averted his eyes, his mind still reeling from the conversation about Snape and occlumency. He recalled Snape mentioning that, aside from himself, only John was skilled in occlumency, which made Snape visibly uneasy during John's visit to the potions office. This revelation left Harry pondering the true nature of Snape's fear and the complexities of their entangled relationships. As the school year progressed, the fifth-grade students found themselves buried under an overwhelming amount of homework, further exacerbating Harry's physical and mental exhaustion. With Valentine's Day approaching, Harry couldn't help but feel the weight of his responsibilities and the challenges that lay ahead, both in his personal battles and in the looming conflict with Voldemort. Alone again this year, Harry could only watch as Cho Chang and Cedric Diggory made plans to visit the tea house for a date. He felt out of place, as if he belonged under the carriage rather than within its confines. Maybe Hermione is right. I should find someone else I like, he muttered to himself. As he walked down the corridor, his eyes caught sight of Ginny. He was about to greet her when Quidditch teammate Michael Corner approached her. The two shared an intimate moment, their behavior suggesting they were more than just friends. Harry couldn't quite place his feelings. A sense of inexplicable discomfort washed over him. Was he truly the only one at Hogwarts without a partner? This moment of introspection highlighted Harry's sense of isolation amidst the bustling life of Hogwarts. It wasn't just about being single, it was about feeling disconnected from the experiences that his peers seemed to navigate with ease. The sight of Ginny and Michael together, so at ease with each other, contrasted sharply with Harry's own sense of solitude. It was a reminder of the complexities of teenage relationships, a maze that Harry found himself navigating with more difficulty than he would have liked to admit. Chapter 330, Draco and Astoria, on February 14th. John hadn't initially realized the significance of the day until he noticed Draco Malfoy's meticulously styled hair, which had evidently taken over 2 hours to perfect. At the moment, Draco was dousing himself in a perfume that bore a faint scent of pine wood. Crabbe and Goyle approached, only to be promptly dismissed by a clearly irritated Malfoy. For reasons unknown, ever since their 5th year, the duo found themselves on the receiving end of Malfoy's ire with increasing frequency. Pansy Parkinson, who usually found herself ensnared by Daphne Greengrass's company, was sporting an unusually joyful expression. Her attire for the day included an overly large bow tie, a stark contrast to her typically venomous appearance. Today she resembled more of a sweet, innocent girl, eagerly awaiting her third-year boyfriend who had the privilege of visiting Hogsmeade. The air at Hogwarts was thick with romance, the pervasive pink hues almost suffocating in their intensity. As they lined up to depart, Pansy could still be seen exchanging winks with her young beau. Argus Filch stood at the foyer, overseeing the registration process with an eagle eye, ensuring no one could sneak past. Professor McGonagall was there too, her presence a guarantee of order. Dolores Umbridge, with her sly, unpleasant demeanor, watched the students with what seemed like malice. Daphne, sporting a new hairstyle with her blonde locks neatly tied back and dressed in a white dress she wouldn't normally wear, looked every bit the girl next door from a wealthy family. Her transformation caught John off guard. Daphne's gaze was fixed on the crowd, and noticing John's surprise, she blushed and whispered angrily, "Astoria has received a love letter. Some boy has asked her to meet in Hogsmeade. I intend to find out which audacious suitor from which house dares to court my sister." Daphne was fiercely protective, unwilling to let anyone poach her sister. She speculated about the possible house the suitor could belong to. Gryffindor, with its bold and sometimes annoying boys, was a possibility, as was Ravenclaw, with its intellectually showy students. Even Hufflepuff was under suspicion, especially considering Cedric Diggory's commendable character, which might have left a favorable impression on Astoria. John watched as Daphne peered around the corridor pillars, a mix of determination and concern on her face. He reminded her, if you don't hand over the consent form to Filch, you might not make it to Hogsmeade. Taking a deep breath, Daphne approached Filch with feigned calmness and handed over her consent form. Filch, upon seeing John, inquired in a low voice about a particular coupon, referring to an ice cream discount card John had given him. Surprisingly, Filch seemed shy about asking, hinting at a personal interest in the offer. John, taken aback by Filch's unusual demeanor, noticed hints of a transformation in the caretaker. Peeking from beneath his usual attire was new clothing, and his hair appeared freshly washed. "I believe there's been an update on that event," John replied, sensing Filch's newfound enthusiasm for life. Filch, visibly elated, quickly returned the consent form to John, wishing him a pleasant time in Hogsmeade. His smile was so unexpected that it left the students, and even Professor McGonagall, in disbelief. They had never seen Filch in such a light-hearted mood. John pocketed the consent form without further comment, leaving the scene with a sense of curiosity about Filch's sudden change. This moment also left Professor McGonagall momentarily speechless, reflecting on the unexpected personal lives of Hogwarts staff. The thought crossed her mind, but she decided it was best to ignore it. After all, nothing would happen to John, and that parent wasn't nearly as dependable as John was. Umbridge had considered confronting John to catch him off guard, but remembering his warning, she reluctantly held back, her grip tightening around her pen. As the students dispersed, most of them, in pairs, Daphne noticed her sister walking alone and couldn't help but sneer. That guy is quite cautious. Nearby, Pansy and her boyfriend were excitedly discussing a visit to the new ice cream parlor, the same one Filch had been asking for coupons for. It was a branch of Florin Fusco's, a popular spot in Diagon Alley that had expanded nationwide thanks to an investment. They were running an opening promotion with half-price discounts for those with coupons, and there was even a lucky draw offering bizarre flavors like tomato scrambled egg and mapo tofu ice cream. The grand prize was a discount card for unlimited ice cream. Daphne found herself wondering, how did John get one of those discount cards? That place is really popular. Pansy's mentioned it a few times, Daphne mused, her attention drifting from her sister to John. They're having a couples week event where you can win free ice cream by completing couples challenges. Her gaze lingered on John, and she quickly added, I've just heard their ice cream is really good. Then let's give it a try, suggested with a smile. And just like that, Daphne's thoughts about her sister vanished. Despite enjoying free ice cream, Daphne couldn't shake off a feeling of resentment. John, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy his creamy treat, and though he admitted the flavor became monotonous after a while. Daphne watched other couples at the event, particularly a girl who adored her partner as he skillfully threw a dart at a turntable, earning a kiss on the forehead as their reward. This simple act of affection and the free ice cream that followed was exactly what Daphne had wanted. Why did we skip the challenge? Daphne asked, feeling cheated. Because I own the shop, John revealed nonchalantly. He had been the investor behind Florin Fusco's expansion, a personal venture rather than an angel investment. Just then, Daphne spotted her sister approaching with Draco Malfoy. Malfoy seemed eager to hold Astoria's hand, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the couple's event. This was his chance. John and Daphne quickly hid, her eyes flashing with a murderous intent. So, Draco is the one who wrote the love letter? John asked, feigning ignorance as Malfoy joined the queue. Daphne clenched her wand, already plotting Malfoy's downfall. Silently, John offered a galleon for Malfoy's inevitable misfortune, wondering if 100 galleons would be enough to soothe his injuries. I believe in love's freedom, Malfoy exclaimed, ice cream dripping down his face like horns, standing beside John. Well, freedom, John replied half-heartedly, sensing that Daphne's issue with Malfoy was personal. At least she didn't curse you, he offered as consolation, trying to find a silver lining. Malfoy, determined to restore his pride, turned to John. If you had a sister, you wouldn't act like her, would you? John shook his head, smiling. If I had a sister, I'd want her to find happiness on her own terms. It's about respecting her choices and supporting her, even if it means stepping back sometimes. His words were sincere, hoping to offer Malfoy a different perspective on love and protection. Careful, or I might just shove your wand into your head, John teased with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Malfoy, taken aback, could only stare in disbelief. Was that a joke? He wondered silently, scrutinizing John's expression for any hint of seriousness. Seeing John's smile, warm and devoid of any malice, Malfoy decided it must have been a jest after all. With a huff of disdain, he carelessly tossed the remnants of his ice cream onto the roadside. Meanwhile, Astoria was escorted away by Daphne, leaving John and Malfoy to meander through the bustling streets of Hogsmeade. As they strolled past the ice cream parlor once more, they caught sight of Cedric Diggory planting a tender kiss on Cho Chang's cheek. In a moment of impulsive jealousy, Malfoy dashed forward, covering several meters in seconds, and snatched an ice cream cone right from in front of Cedric. Cedric, caught off guard, could only watch in bewilderment as Malfoy devoured the ice cream in a single bite. The unexpected spiciness of the treat sent a shock through Malfoy's system, causing him to nearly collapse as his body convulsed. I can't feel my tongue, Malfoy gasped, his voice tinged with regret and a hint of despair. You're lucky Cedric didn't retaliate, John remarked nonchalantly, as they continued their walk towards the Three Broomsticks. Upon entering the tavern, Malfoy's mood visibly lifted. John glanced around the room, his gaze landing on a familiar figure. It was clear to him now, Astoria was merely a fleeting distraction. Harry Potter was, and always would be, Malfoy's true rival. Just then, Goyle and Crabbe lumbered into view, their presence bolstering the Slytherin representation. Malfoy, with a newfound swagger, made his way into the tavern, barely recognizable as the boy who had just been on the verge of tears over a spicy ice cream. John's attention, however, was drawn to another figure in the tavern. Not far from Harry sat a man with hair as white as cotton candy, an intriguing sight amidst the usual crowd. The dynamics within the tavern hinted at unfolding stories, rivalries, and perhaps unexpected alliances. Chapter 331, Interview and Production. Harry was feeling quite down and had hoped a visit to Hogsmeade would lift his spirits. However, his mood only worsened when he spotted Cho Chang and Cedric Diggory sharing a cozy tea together in a tea house, their laughter and flirtatious exchanges a stark contrast to his gloom. Realizing any hope he had was futile, he allowed Hermione to lead him to the tavern for a change of scenery. There, they encountered Hagrid, his face marred by fresh wounds, drowning his sorrows in drink, much like Harry. Hagrid, what happened to you?" Harry inquired, noting the bruises. "Me?" Hagrid responded, attempting to sound upbeat. "I'm fine, Harry, Hermione. Really, I am." His eyes, however, told a different story, never leaving his glass. After a brief silence, Hagrid suddenly shared, "We're quite alike, aren't we, Harry?" His question caught Harry off guard. "In what way?" Harry asked, puzzled. "Well, as I've mentioned before, we're both somewhat outsiders," Hagrid explained, nodding to himself. "Orphans, to be precise. It's a different world when you have a loving family." He paused, taking a sip of his wine. "Having good parents makes all the difference. If yours were still around, life would be quite different, wouldn't it?" Hagrid seemed to seek confirmation, his mood evidently low. "Perhaps," Harry replied cautiously, picking up on Hagrid's somber tone. "Family?" Hagrid continued, his voice darkening. "Blood ties are crucial, no matter what anyone says." He then wiped away a drop of blood from his eye, his demeanor growing more despondent. Unable to ignore Hagrid's visible distress, Hermione pressed, "Hagrid, where did these injuries come from?" "What injury?" Hagrid feigned ignorance. "The ones on your face," Hermione insisted, not easily fooled. "Just some minor scrapes from work," Hagrid attempted to dismiss, eager to avoid further questioning. He made to leave, but his exit was interrupted by Draco Malfoy's arrival. "Look who it is," Malfoy sneered, his gaze fixed on Harry. "Potter, missing your sidekick, Weasley?" "Malfoy, I'm really not in the mood today," Harry retorted, standing to face him. Their standoff was interrupted by a surprised voice. "You are Harry Potter?" The white-haired man approached, recognizing Harry's scar. "Xenophilius Lovegood, editor of The Quibbler. Pleasure to meet you." Hermione realized this was the person she had been seeking. "The Quibbler? That peculiar magazine?" Malfoy mocked. "Potter, aiming to be a comedy star now?" "I'm not," Harry began, but Hermione quickly intervened. "Mr. Lovegood, I'm Hermione Granger," she introduced herself. "Ah, yes, my daughter's friend. I'm here for an appointment," Mr. Lovegood confirmed, his presence seemingly validating Malfoy's taunts about Harry becoming a comedy star, much to Harry's chagrin. "Comedy star Harry Potter," Malfoy laughed, but his mockery was cut short by Hagrid's imposing figure standing up, saying sternly, "Enough." Malfoy hesitated, stepping back as Hagrid's presence commanded attention. However, Hagrid's demeanor shifted when he noticed someone behind Malfoy, prompting him to hastily exit the tavern. John, witnessing Hagrid's abrupt departure, decided it was time to investigate what Hagrid was hiding in the Forbidden Forest. "I've brought some healing potion for you," John mentioned, referring to a cabinet next to the armor. Acknowledging John's gesture, Hagrid quickly left, his hurried exit making it seem as though he was fleeing from an unseen threat. Turning to Hermione, John noticed her concern for Hagrid and her determination to uncover the truth behind his injuries and sudden departure. Greeted warmly, Hermione asked, "Who might you be?" "Hi, John," came a response, carried by an almost ethereal singing voice. Luna, appearing momentarily dazed, tilted her head, her expression one of gentle confusion. "Luna," John acknowledged, his gaze shifting between her and Hermione. "Do you two have an appointment?" Hermione confirmed with a nod. John gestured forward. Then let's proceed. He bid Mr. Lovegood farewell, and alongside Malfoy exited the tavern. "Goodbye, John," Luna called out, waving. A horned, snoring creature, too large for her pocket, peeked out. Mr. Lovegood, taken aback, remarked, "So, that's John Wick? Remarkably young." "John is truly a kind soul," Luna shared with her father. Harry, still puzzled, inquired, "What exactly is happening?" As they settled down, Hermione addressed Harry with a seriousness. "Mr. Lovegood is here to assist us in revealing the truth to everyone." "What truth?" Harry's confusion lingered. Luna, her voice dreamy, revealed, "He has returned." Hermione added, "The Ministry of Magic has remained silent on this matter." Harry realized this was about making Voldemort's return known, much like Dumbledore had done. With the Ministry staying silent, Dumbledore had to act alone. Following his recent scar pain, Harry's unease had only grown. Hermione's intention was clear, to warn others of Voldemort's return. Mr. Lovegood, as the editor-in-chief of the Quibbler, held a platform that, while not as mainstream as the Daily Prophet, wielded significant influence. For Harry, supporting Dumbledore through the Quibbler was an ideal strategy. The Hogsmeade trip concluded. Back at the castle, John found Malfoy still mocking Harry, calling him a comedian. However, Malfoy's amusement was short-lived upon Daphne's return. "Rob my sister and take John away," she exclaimed. What followed was a spectacle. Malfoy was suspended upside down, a spectacle of misery, for over an hour. The more Astoria pleaded for mercy, the more relentless Daphne became. John could only shake his head at the fickleness of fate. When finally released, Malfoy was a dizzy, bloodshot mess. By night, in the Star Club, John focused on the still bubbling metallic liquid. Retrieving a box, he opened it and began adding its contents to the crucible, causing the metallic liquid to vanish as if devoured. Slitting his wrist, his blood mingled with the concoction, producing a thick white smoke that swiftly filled the room. Moments later, the smoke reversed its flow, reabsorbing into the now red liquid. As John ceased bleeding, his complexion turned pale. After a mishap caused by blood loss, he steadied himself with a drink from the Star Club's cabinet, which also accelerated the healing of his wrist. Seated at the round table, John admired the starry dome above, a beautiful sight that relaxed him. A golden chain with a delicate hourglass dangled from his wrist. After a while, he checked a trembling badge, murmuring an almost inaudible "almost" before falling asleep in the club. The next day, an owl delivered the Quibbler to Malfoy in the auditorium. Eager to see if Harry was indeed portrayed as a comedian, Malfoy eagerly opened the publication. John watched, curious about the unfolding reactions to the Quibbler's latest edition. The truth was laid bare for all to see. I witnessed the resurrection of you-know-who that fateful night. As Malfoy's eyes scanned the headline, a flurry of owls descended upon the Gryffindor common room, each carrying letters that seemed to echo the gravity of the situation. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably as the students gathered around, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The letters, it seemed, were not just ordinary correspondence, but missives bearing witness to the dark events that had unfolded. Malfoy, usually so composed, found himself momentarily caught off guard by the headline. It was a stark reminder of the reality they were all facing, a reality where the shadows of the past were creeping back into the light. The Gryffindors, for their part, handled the letters with a sense of solemnity. Each letter was opened and read with a growing sense of urgency, as if the words themselves might hold the key to understanding the looming threat that had once again cast its shadow over the wizarding world. As the contents of the letters were shared among the students, whispers filled the room. There was a sense of unity in their shared concern, a recognition that the events they were reading about were not just distant tales, but a very real danger that could affect them all. Malfoy watched from a distance, his usual sneer replaced by a thoughtful frown. The article had stirred something within him, a realization that the return of you-know-who was not a matter of idle gossip or house rivalry, but a grave threat that demanded a serious response. In that moment, the lines that had once seemed so clear, between houses, between friends and foes, began to blur. The reality of their situation was dawning on everyone, and it was clear that the challenges ahead would require them to stand together, united against the darkness that threatened to engulf their world. Chapter 332, gold, and the search. Harry received numerous letters, filling him with happiness and a sense of purpose. The awkwardness he felt around his peers, particularly between the genders, dissipated. This sense of joy, however, was short-lived with the arrival of Umbridge. As a direct challenge to Dumbledore's authority, Umbridge's most detestable policy was her restriction on student freedoms, with Harry Potter being her primary target. "I can't get John Wick, but I can certainly get you, can't I?" Umbridge approached Harry with a slow, menacing tone. "Why do you have so many letters, Mr. Potter? Since when is receiving letters a crime?" Fred Weasley, ever the bold one, retorted publicly, earning a flash of resentment in Umbridge's eyes. "Be careful, Mr. Weasley, or you'll find yourself in solitary confinement," Umbridge threatened. Turning her attention back to Harry, she inquired, "Mr. Potter?" Harry hesitated, knowing that Umbridge would eventually discover the truth about the Quibbler. Deciding to be forthright, he admitted, "They're about an interview." "An interview?" Umbridge's eyes narrowed dangerously, her voice rising. "What did you say in it?" "The reporters asked questions, and I answered them," Harry replied, tossing a copy of the Quibbler to her. Umbridge's face contorted into an ugly shade of burgundy upon seeing the magazine. "When did this happen?" "Last time we were in Hogsmeade," Harry said truthfully. "It seems you enjoy the attention, Mr. Potter," Umbridge remarked, her smile failing to reach her eyes. "Why are you lying?" "I'm not!" Harry protested angrily. 50 points from Gryffindor," Umbridge declared with a forced smile, "and a week of detention for you." Harry clenched his fists, trembling with rage. By noon, Umbridge had issued an educational decree banning the Quibbler. Hermione, however, smiled at the news, confusing Harry as they were both targets of Umbridge's ire. "Don't you see?" Hermione whispered, her pride evident. "The best way to get everyone to read your article is to have it banned." The students, naturally rebellious, became even more interested in the Quibbler once Umbridge explicitly forbade it. Conversations about Voldemort's return began to spread throughout the school. The professors, subtly showing their support for Harry, added credibility to his cause. Professor Sprout awarded Harry 20 points for a simple act of assistance, and Professor Flitwick gifted him a box of screaming sugar mice after Charms class, both gestures of approval. "Enjoying your fame, are you?" Malfoy taunted Harry with a sneer. "Umbridge is right, you're just seeking attention." Ron, unable to contain his anger, shouted, "What did you say?" Malfoy responded with a swift kick to Ron's stomach, causing him to double over. Grabbing Harry by the collar and slamming him against the wall, Malfoy hissed, "Your fame isn't because of his death." "I've never thought that way," Harry retorted, struggling against Malfoy's grip. "I just want everyone to know Voldemort is back." "Shut up," Malfoy snarled, pressing his arm against Harry's throat. "Don't fancy yourself a savior." "Malfoy," Professor McGonagall's stern voice cut through the tension. "Put Potter down." Ignoring her, Malfoy continued until another voice commanded, "Malfoy, put Harry Potter down." Snape had arrived, his presence causing Malfoy to hesitate. With a final shove that sent Harry's head crashing against the wall, Malfoy stormed off, leaving a tense silence in his wake. Neville, panting heavily with a dark bruise forming over his left eye, was among those who witnessed the confrontation, a testament to the escalating tensions within Hogwarts. In the aftermath of their confrontation, Malfoy and Neville lay on the ground, gasping for breath, while John observed in silence. Malfoy, fueled by a mix of anger and grief, shouted his frustration into the sky, lamenting the injustice of Heinrich's death being overshadowed by Harry Potter's heroics. "Why is it that Heinrich's death is overlooked, while everyone celebrates Potter?" he questioned, his voice thick with emotion. Malfoy's anger wasn't directed at Harry himself, but at the world's indifference to Heinrich, a casualty from a family associated with dark magic, now forgotten. John, touching his ring thoughtfully, responded with a calm, "This is reality, Draco." He then turned his attention to Neville, who had remained quiet throughout the exchange. With a seriousness that underscored the gravity of his request, John entrusted Neville with a mission of utmost importance, to find the remaining Horcruxes necessary to defeat Voldemort. Neville, though unsure why John believed so strongly in him, felt the weight of this responsibility deeply. He understood the significance of John's faith in him and was determined to fulfill this mission, not just for John, but to prove that heroes come in many forms. Meanwhile, in Little Hangleton, a figure with long, unkempt blonde hair made his way through the cemetery, his wand casting a faint light in the darkness. He stopped at a site marked by charred earth, a silent testament to a violent past. This man, Kim Leddisley, removed his mask and lay down amidst the ruins, contemplating the heat that once consumed this place. Speaking softly to himself, he acknowledged his fear of failure, but also his determination to succeed in his final mission. Kim's journey had taken him to many places, all in search of an object John had deemed crucial for their success. Despite his fear of death, Kim's resolve was unshaken. The horrors he had witnessed haunted him, but they also drove him forward towards the Riddle House. This mansion, once belonging to Tom Riddle's father, stood as his last destination, a place where he hoped to find what had eluded him thus far. As Kim approached the Riddle House, his thoughts were a mix of fear and determination. The journey from the cemetery to the mansion felt interminably long, but he knew that reaching his goal was a matter of when, not if. The Riddle House, with its dark history and connection to Voldemort, was the final piece of the puzzle in their quest to defeat the Dark Lord once and for all. Chapter 333, Gold and the Horse. The villagers of Little Hangleton still referred to the dilapidated mansion on the hillside as the Riddle House, despite it having been abandoned for years. In its prime, it was the most magnificent building for miles, a symbol of grandeur and wealth. Now it stood desolate, its glory days long gone, with ivy aggressively claiming its walls, roof tiles missing, and windows boarded up as if to contain some malevolent force within. Indeed, the house harbored a dark past. The Riddle family, once its illustrious occupants, were found dead under mysterious circumstances, dressed in their dinner attire, sparking rumors of murder. Little did the villagers know their deaths were tied to a vendetta within the magical world. Jin approached the mansion, its faded splendor barely visible through the overgrowth. "Araho Cave is open," he murmured, and with a click, the front door swung open. Stepping inside, his shoes left prints on the dusty floor, the sound echoing in the silent, forsaken halls. "Lumos," he whispered, and a bright light emanated from his wand, illuminating the path ahead. The ground bore marks of something large having been dragged across it, possibly a giant serpent, with the soil dry in the center and damp at the edges from recent rains. As Jin explored the mansion, his keen eyes scanned each room. In one, he discovered a skeleton, its presence marking a death that had occurred over a year ago. "He was killed by magic," Jin concluded, examining a strand of white hair with his wand. The evidence suggested a magical altercation, and Jin's expression grew cautious. Despite the decay and the overwhelming stench of death that permeated the air, Jin pressed on, his determination undeterred. Room by room he searched for something, his hope diminishing with each empty discovery. Eventually, despair took hold, and he slumped against a table, his eyes reflecting a profound sense of loss. He had traversed far and wide, clinging to the hope of finding what he sought, only to be met with disappointment. In a moment of anguish, Jin's emotions spiraled into madness. With a wave of his wand, the glass windows of the mansion shattered, the shards flying as he faced the wind, his disheveled blonde hair sticking to his skin. It was then, at the brink of despair, that he noticed a white horse at the base of the hill. The horse, majestic and serene, turned and began to walk away. Driven by a sudden impulse, Jin followed, his body bearing the marks of his frantic passage through the underbrush. The horse led him to an even older mansion, nestled between two steep hillsides and shrouded by dense foliage. This place, exuding an aura of ancient mystery and foreboding, seemed untouched by time, yet unwelcoming to visitors. The white horse, seemingly a local drawn by the lush grass, grazed peacefully on the lawn. Jin approached the horse, gently stroking its soft mane, before turning his attention to the mansion. Its eerie presence suggested that it concealed secrets as dark as those of the Riddle House, if not darker. Pushing through the nettles, Jin stood before the entrance, the weight of the mansion's history pressing down on him. He stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of decay and neglect. "You want him alive, don't you?" he whispered into the shadows, his voice a mix of determination and hope, ready to confront whatever lay within. The whispers that had been haunting Jin since he entered the house seemed to blur the line between reality and hallucination. "He lied to you," He doesn't possess that power at all. If he had been strong enough, that fire would never have occurred. Wear it, it can fulfill all your desires. Hurry, come and find it. These whispers guided Jin to a box adorned with intricate patterns on its pitch-black surface. With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, Jin slowly opened the box to reveal a black gemstone ring nestled within. Put it on, and you shall understand its true nature. Yes, you've seen it on that book. All your regrets can be rectified. Put it on. His voice persisted, its whispers unceasing. The black octahedral gem gleamed with a glass-like luster, its heart of gold reminiscent of a boat braving the tumultuous sea. Jin's heart was a battleground of emotions as the image of a black-haired boy appeared before him, the voice promising redemption if he wore the ring. Despite knowing the potential consequences, the temptation was overwhelming. As Jin's fingers neared the ring, a sudden force seemed to push against his chest, causing the ring to slip from his grasp and clatter to the ground. Taking a few steps back, Jin's attention was momentarily diverted by the cry of a white horse outside, which appeared to have been startled by something as mundane as a grass thorn. Jin's badge vibrated with incoming group news, momentarily pulling his focus away from the ring. When he looked back, a fleeting vision of greedy, desperate eyes haunted him. Resolute, Jin picked up the ring, placed it back in the box, and decisively left the house behind. The white steed, having finished its grazing, ambled towards the residence of Little Hangleton, leaving Jin to ponder the surreal encounter. The horse, for a moment, seemed to transform into someone else, but upon closer inspection, it was just a horse. "Is it you?" Jin asked, though he knew no answer would come. Glancing at the ring, which still seemed to exert its influence, Jin was determined not to succumb. As he walked away, the old mansion loomed behind him like a lurking beast, its dark maw ready to swallow anyone who dared enter. With a flick of his wand, Jin disappeared with a pop, leaving the door to swing shut in the wind, as if to erase any sign of his visit. Meanwhile, John was meticulously going through the items recently delivered, his expression betraying a hint of dissatisfaction. Those familiar with him could tell he was not pleased, his usual pallor now tinged with an unhealthy shade. "No Horcruxes," he muttered, discarding the worthless items Mundungus had brought in an attempt to settle his debts. Mundungus, wary of stealing too frequently, and under the watchful eye of Creature, the old house elf, had resorted to scavenging through the remnants of the Black family's possessions. Despite Sirius's tendency to discard family belongings, Mundungus had been advised by John through Tang Mi to look for items that, though inconspicuous, might hold value as antiques. "These cannot be used to settle debts," John declared, frustrated by the low value of the items and warning that Mundungus's attempts to use such rubbish for repayment would not even cover the interest owed. Basil, John's owl, made another trip to the owl shack, seeking respite and a place to vent. With fewer tasks requiring Basil's unique abilities, the owl had more freedom, though it was careful not to cause trouble, a testament to its unusual nature. John was somewhat surprised to see Basil return, considering the owl's usual companions included Tom, capable of biting a wizard, and the formidable Zulu, a creature that could easily overpower several wizards. Basil no longer appeared as sleek and agile as before. Some feathers were missing from his wings. Yet, his expression remained proud, as if he had emerged victorious from a battle. John couldn't help but wonder if there was an owl at Hogwarts capable of challenging Basil. The once immaculate plumage now bore the marks of a recent skirmish, hinting at an unseen struggle that had taken place. Despite the evident wear and tear, Basil's demeanor conveyed an unshakable confidence, suggesting that whatever encounter he had been involved in, he considered it a triumph. John's curiosity was piqued. Hogwarts was home to many owls, each with its unique characteristics and abilities. However, the thought of any of them engaging in a confrontation with Basil seemed unlikely. Basil was not just any ordinary owl. His prowess was well known, and his appearance, despite the current disheveled state, usually commanded respect. As John pondered the possibilities, he realized that the story behind Basil's condition must be extraordinary. The proud look in Basil's eyes told a tale of resilience and determination, qualities that were admired among the magical creatures of Hogwarts. The mystery of what or who could have possibly stood toe-to-toe with Basil added an intriguing layer to the already complex social dynamics of the magical creatures residing within the castle. It was a reminder that even in a place as magical as Hogwarts, battles were fought, victories were claimed, and stories of bravery and courage continued to unfold, often unnoticed by the human inhabitants. John knew that understanding the full story behind Basil's appearance would require patience and perhaps a bit of detective work. But for now, he was content in knowing that Basil, with his indomitable spirit, had returned from whatever adventure he had embarked on, not just as a survivor, but as a proud warrior of the skies. Chapter 334. Basil and Hedwig John's concerns were quickly alleviated when he learned that Harry's owl, Hedwig, had been sent to Hagrid for treatment. Recalling Basil's smug demeanor, John inquired, "Did you have a confrontation with Hedwig?" Basil unfurled his wings, seemingly boasting of his exploits. Though both were snowy owls, for reasons unknown, they had been at odds since their first encounter. The rivalry was manageable during their second year, but escalated to outright skirmishes at John's residence in their third year. Tom, wagging his tail, looked up at Basil with evident admiration. John could only shake his head in resignation. Basil was generally well-behaved, except when it came to Hedwig. There was simply no reasoning with him on that matter. Harry's mood had been buoyant, bolstered by the support of many who believed in him. However, his spirits were dampened first by an encounter with Malfoy and then by learning of Hedwig's defeat. In the dining hall, Malfoy glowered at Harry with undisguised animosity. Crabbe handed John a bowl of steaming soup, which John sipped thoughtfully. Daphne, however, was slightly irked, feeling that Crabbe had overstepped during a moment of her vulnerability, and she was not one to let such things slide without comment. Astoria appeared bewildered, unable to contribute meaningfully to the situation. The day's classes were particularly demanding, but Hagrid managed to uplift the spirits of his students. He even applied some ointment to his face, improving his appearance significantly. He suggested bringing a Zouwu to class, an idea John promptly vetoed due to the creature's unsuitability for such an environment. After class, John noticed Basil loitering near Hagrid's hut. Despite Basil's attempt to conceal himself within the foliage, John, with his seeker's acumen, spotted him with ease, much like finding the snitch during a Quidditch match. Harry, frustrated, pointed out to Hermione, "Look, Basil is up to his old tricks again." Hermione approached John with a plea. "John, could you ask Basil to return?" She was well aware of the animosity between Basil and Hedwig, but hadn't anticipated Basil going so far as to blockade the door. After a couple of calls, Basil reluctantly flew to John's arm. "Can you please stop attacking Hedwig?" Ron implored, his voice tinged with desperation. "You're going to seriously hurt her." Basil, feigning innocence, glanced at Ron with a tilt of his head, as if puzzled by the accusation. Ron, exasperated, exclaimed, "Don't act as if you don't understand." Realizing his ruse was futile, Basil ceased his pretense. Casting a defiant shadow over Harry and Ron, he flew towards Hagrid's hut and perched there. Basil seemed to declare, "I'll confront Hedwig, and no one can stop me." In a fit of anger, Ron hurled a stone at Basil, who dodged with a flap of his wing, causing the stone to inadvertently strike Harry on the head. John, feeling helpless, gestured to Hermione that there was little he could do. He departed with Malfoy, leaving Harry to implore Hagrid to safeguard Hedwig. Harry cast a wary glance at Basil, who was now sharpening his claws on Hagrid's roof, leaving deep gouges in the wood. "This snowy owl seems off," Harry remarked, a sentiment echoed by Ron. They both felt a chill run down their spines at the thought of being on the receiving end of Basil's talons. They couldn't help but wonder how John managed to raise such an unusually formidable pet. Back in the Gryffindor common room, Harry was plagued by concerns for Hedwig. His forehead throbbed with pain, prompting him to press his scar against the cold windowpane beside his bed. The chill alleviated some of the discomfort, and he hummed contentedly. Soon, he drifted off to sleep, only to be haunted by a nightmare in which Basil viciously attacked Hedwig. In his dream, Harry attempted to intervene, but Basil grew monstrously large and devoured him whole. The scene shifted to a dark, ancient room, lit only by the dim glow of a candle. "It seems I've been deceived," Harry heard to himself say, his voice unnaturally sharp and cold. "Master, please forgive me," a figure in a black robe pleaded, kneeling on the ground. The flickering candlelight cast unsettling shadows across the trembling form. In Harry's dream, his voice, cold and commanding, issued from his lips without his consent. "I don't blame you, Rookwood," he said, rising from the dark, velvet luxurious chair. He walked towards the shivering man, towering over him with a menacing presence. Harry, observing from a distance, noticed another figure standing respectfully on the other side of the dim candlelight, his platinum hair unmistakable even in the shadows. "Is your information reliable, Rookwood?" The voice was laden with danger, making Harry feel as though the speaker harbored intentions of murder. "You should know, I don't tolerate deception." "Reliable, master, I assure you. After all, I have worked in the Ministry of Magic," the man stammered, his fear escalating. The owner of the voice turned, his gaze landing on the platinum-haired man. "Lucius," he called. "Master," Lucius responded, stepping slightly out of the shadows, allowing his face to be seen. Harry's pupils constricted in recognition. "I attempted to control Bode, but he resisted my imperious curse," Lucius reported respectfully. The master's gaze shifted back to the man on the ground. Rookwood, now visibly terrified, insisted, "Bode can't take it away, master. He knows he can't." "Stand up, Rookwood." The voice softened slightly, offering a momentary reprieve to the frightened man. "We need to start anew. Voldemort thanks you, Rookwood," the sharp, cold voice continued. "I still require your assistance, and all the information you can provide." Rookwood, feeling as though he had been granted a pardon, pledged his loyalty repeatedly. "Call Avery in," was the next command. After Rookwood's departure, only 2 figures remained in the room. Harry's gaze returned to Lucius. "How's Bellatrix?" "Narcissa is tending to her, master. She's badly wounded," Lucius admitted, struggling with his words. "She has sustained numerous magical injuries." "Dumbledore played us for fools," the master mused. "Dumbledore?" The master approached, a hint of curiosity in his tone. "It wasn't him." Turning to face the wall, Harry noticed a mirror hanging in the shadows, revealing a face paler than a skull, with red eyes marked by 2 slits for pupils. "It's someone else, Lucius." With those words, Harry realized the identity of his current persona. "No!" he yelled in horror. "What?" A voice sounded from the side, and Harry found himself entangled in a curtain, feeling someone frantically trying to free him. "Can you stop thrashing about like a lunatic?" Ron's voice came through. "I'll get you out." Once freed from the curtain, Harry gasped for air, the terror of the dream still palpable. This time, there was no third dream, but the direct transformation into Voldemort was even more terrifying. His forehead throbbed painfully, as if on fire. Shaking, Harry sat back on the bed, trying to piece together what he had witnessed. Ron looked at his friend with concern. "I was." "The Dark Lord," Harry gasped, recalling the figures he had seen in his dream. "Malfoy's dad was there," he added. "Malfoy?" Ron expressed disbelief, considering Draco Malfoy's usual demeanor. However, upon reflection, he realized it made sense, given Lucius Malfoy's allegiance to the Death Eaters. Harry shared the details of his dream, including the mention of Bode. Meanwhile, Dean and Siamus were noisily preparing for bed. "Harry," Ron said nervously, "you have to tell." "I can't tell anyone," Harry interjected firmly, anticipating Ron's suggestion. "If I were proficient in occlumency, I wouldn't be privy to these visions. They want me to learn to block them out." Ron understood who they were. The two decided not to inform Hermione until the next day. Hermione, far more astute, gleaned more from the details. "Sturgis Podmore," she said breathlessly. "Remember his arrest? Lucius Malfoy attacked him Oh, perhaps he was guarding the door under the invisibility cloak when Malfoy apprehended him." Hermione's gaze met Harry's. He had expected an analysis or perhaps praise, but instead she admonished, "But you shouldn't have seen this, Harry." Taken aback, Harry responded, "What?" Hermione, adopting a stern tone, advised, "You need to learn to block these visions. It might be better if you try to forget what you've seen." Harry wanted to argue, to point out the value of the information he had gained, but Hermione's concern was clear. "You'll have to work on shielding your mind," she insisted, emphasizing the importance of occlumency in protecting Harry from unwanted intrusions. Harry felt a wave of depression wash over him. He had believed he was doing the right thing, yet Hermione's words painted a picture of impending doom. Her concern, though well-intentioned, weighed heavily on him, casting a shadow over his actions. He had been working hard on occlumency, dedicating himself to mastering this complex magical discipline. Yet, Hermione's apprehension made him question his efforts, as if his dedication might inadvertently lead to unforeseen consequences. The more he pondered her words, the more he realized the gravity of the situation. Harry understood that mastering occlumency was not just about protecting his own mind, but also about safeguarding those around him from potential threats. The responsibility felt immense, but he was determined to persevere, driven by the need to protect his friends and the broader wizarding community from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Chapter 335, Ignorance and Lies. Basil, the mischievous bird, struck Hedwig once more, causing a few feathers to scatter. Amidst the chaos, Hagrid received a couple of pecks. Summoned to intervene, John observed Hedwig seeking refuge behind Hagrid, too frightened to emerge. Despite Basil's protests, John managed to carry him away, contemplating that perhaps assigning Basil some tasks would help channel his excessive energy. Subsequently, John dispatched a few letters, restoring peace to the owl hut, now devoid of feathers fluttering about. "Thank you," John expressed, accepting a glass of water and offering his gratitude to Goyle, whose attempt at a smile was rather unappealing. Goyle, alternating tea-serving duties with Crabbe, nearly stumbled as he departed. Malfoy leaned in, a hint of conspiracy in his voice. "Umbridge is plotting something again." "Really?" John's interest was piqued, especially after having put Malfoy in high spirits earlier by outmaneuvering Harry in potions class. Malfoy, having sneaked a glance at Umbridge's record book, cursed under his breath, "We're about to lose a professor from Hogwarts." Is she finally making her move? John wasn't surprised. Given Umbridge's controlling nature, retaliation seemed inevitable. "Who is it this time?" "I couldn't see," Malfoy admitted, a touch embarrassed. "I only caught a glimpse before Umbridge returned." John internally sighed at Malfoy's lack of reliability. Nonetheless, the identity of the departing professor seemed almost predictable. Given the harsh deductions in their evaluations, Hagrid and Trelawney were the likely candidates. Trelawney, having recently spoken favorably of Harry, had particularly incensed Umbridge. John surmised that Trelawney's dismissal was imminent. Saturday brought a Quidditch match for Slytherin, which John attended. It was evident that, aside from Harry, no one could match Malfoy's prowess on his firebolt. This advantage made victory almost a certainty for Slytherin, whose trident tactic proved unbeatable once again. The Slytherin stands erupted in cheers, while the rest of the spectators wore expressions of defeat, seemingly resigned to Slytherin's dominance. In the aftermath of their victory, Malfoy's arrogance was palpable. John, however, felt compelled to remind him, "You nearly knocked Cho Chang out of the sky, and Cedric was ready to draw his wand on you." Malfoy's smugness waned. His aggressive play against Ravenclaw, particularly his dangerous maneuver against Cho Chang, had been ruthless. Following the match, a distraught Cho sought comfort, presumably in Cedric's arms. As expected, Cedric confronted Malfoy, wand in hand, leading to a chase that spanned from the Quidditch pitch to Hogwarts Castle. Despite Malfoy's superior fitness, he eventually found himself ensnared by Daphne, hanging upside down in a humiliating predicament. It was John who intervened, sparing Malfoy from an extended period of indignity. Harry, having witnessed the match, had secretly hoped for Cho's victory. Yet Malfoy's superiority, both in skill and equipment, was undeniable. Adding to Harry's frustrations were his dismal grades in potions and the haunting presence of a recurring dream he dared not share with Hermione and Ron, fearing their reprimand. Sirius, the only person who might understand, was beyond reach. Now under Umbridge's vigilant watch, Harry found himself isolated, with even the Gryffindor fireplace under surveillance. Hedwig's injury at Basil's beak prevented any discreet communication. As Harry prepared for his occlumency lesson in Snape's office, he knelt, filled with a sense of foreboding, yet determined to persevere. Harry struggled to clear his mind, but the memories of his childhood, dominated by Dudley's bullying, persisted. Despite his efforts, Snape, a master of legilimency, uncovered his secrets. "What was the last memory?" Snape inquired. "I'm not sure," Harry replied, standing up warily, his head spinning. "Was it the one where my cousin forced me to stand in the toilet?" No, Snape responded, his tone indicating his distaste hadn't sunk to such levels. It was a man, kneeling in the middle of a dark room. A flicker of panic crossed Harry's eyes, but he feigned calmness. It's nothing. Snape's gaze was piercing, challenging Harry's evasion. How did that man in that house enter your mind, Potter? It was just a dream, Harry said, avoiding Snape's intense stare. Snape, unimpressed, pressed on. Remember why you're here, Potter. Do you think I enjoy sacrificing my evenings for this thankless task? I'm aware, Harry replied, his posture stiffening. Snape sighed, reminded of James Potter's arrogance. You're foolish. I expected progress after 2 months. How many dreams involving the Dark Lord have you had? Just this one, Harry lied, failing even to be an honest fool. Do you find these hallucinations and odd dreams appealing, Potter? Do they make you feel special? Snape's voice dripped with sarcasm. No, Harry retorted, anger seeping through his clenched teeth. I've never thought that way. You're not exceptional, Potter. Not special, important, or intelligent, Snape stated coldly. Harry tightened his grip on his wand. I'll mind my own business, he snapped back. That's right, it's my job to interpret the Dark Lord's communications with his Death Eaters, Snape said, satisfied with Harry's frustrated response. Are you ready? Let's try again. Legilimency. Harry's mind was assaulted by the memory of Dementors descending from the sky. As the memory intensified, Snape's figure became clearer, and the Dementors faded. Flustered, Harry raised his wand. Protego, he shouted, sending Snape's wand flying. A foreign memory surfaced, Snape, young and alone in his bedroom. Enough! Snape pushed Harry, causing him to stumble into a shelf. You're bolder and more ignorant than I anticipated, Snape remarked, his face pale. He quickly repaired the disarray with a restoration charm. An improvement nonetheless. The iron armor charm wasn't instructed, but it proved effective. If you can't defend yourself without the iron armor charm, we'll continue without it, Snape said, his tone icy. Harry sensed Snape's desire for retribution, but had no choice but to comply. This time, when he returned to the corridor, he noticed an open door he had never seen before. Snape demanded an explanation, but Harry was as baffled as he was. Why do you refer to Voldemort as the Dark Lord? Only Death Eaters use that term, Harry challenged, his frustration mounting. Before Snape could respond, they were interrupted by a commotion in the hall. Umbridge had made her move, throwing 2 large boxes down the stairs, causing a scene as Trelawney stood bewildered in the center of the hall. Clutching her wand and bottle tightly, John couldn't help but smile at the scene unfolding before him. He retrieved a letter from his pouch, and Basil, his trusty owl, swooped down to deliver it. As one of the more peculiar figures at Hogwarts, it was no surprise to John that Trelawney had become a target for dismissal, especially after the dubious blessing she had bestowed upon Harry. Trelawney's reaction was immediate and visceral. No, this can't be happening. I refuse to accept it, she protested vehemently, her gaze frantically scanning the crowd of Hogwarts students for any potential ally. The strong scent of alcohol emanating from her was so overpowering that nearby students instinctively covered their noses. Trelawney's reputation for ominously predicting the deaths of students at the start of each term certainly didn't help her case in finding support. You can't do this, Trelawney cried out in despair, tears streaming down her face from behind her oversized glasses. I've dedicated 16 years of my life here. Hogwarts is more than just my workplace, it's my home. It used to be, Umbridge coldly retorted, unmoved by Trelawney's plea. As the person who had recently surpassed Draco Malfoy on Hogwarts' most despised list, Umbridge showed no signs of compassion towards Trelawney's plight. Her determination to enforce her authority was evident, regardless of the emotional toll it took on the Hogwarts community. Chapter 3 and 36, Expulsion Overturned and Triumph. Your assessment score has reached the lowest mark, and you are hereby expelled. This is the authority granted to me by the Ministry of Magic, Umbridge declared with a gloating smile, as Professor Trelawney stood frozen, trembling and whimpering in disbelief. The thought of being cast out from the place she had called home for 16 years was unbearable. She collapsed onto a nearby box, her body shaking with sobs. Her pitiful state elicited sympathy from the onlookers. Lavender and Parvati, who were fond of her, clung to each other, tears streaming down their faces. Professor McGonagall made her way through the crowd, approaching Trelawney with a determined stride. Despite their differences, McGonagall couldn't stand idly by and watch a colleague be treated so unjustly. There, Sybil, try to calm down," she said, offering Trelawney a handkerchief and gently patting her on the back in an attempt to soothe her. "It's not the end of the world, you'll see." "Why not?" Umbridge interjected with a cruel smirk, eager to witness McGonagall's attempt to comfort Trelawney with what she presumed would be empty reassurances. Just then, a black owl descended from the sky, interrupting the tense moment. It was a majestic black long-eared owl, which after circling twice, landed gracefully on another box close to Trelawney. Umbridge's smug expression faltered as she recognized the owl and the silver-sealed envelope it carried in its beak. Her face contorted into a mix of shock and disbelief, making incoherent noises as if she had been suddenly gagged. Even Professor McGonagall, who had been consoling Trelawney, paused in astonishment. The black long-eared owl hooted, prompting Trelawney to take the envelope. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Trelawney was unable to move, so McGonagall took the envelope on her behalf. The owl, having delivered its message, did not depart immediately. Instead, it fixed Umbridge with a piercing gaze from its sharp yellow eyes, a look so intense that Umbridge felt an irrational urge to appease the creature. "Your Excellency Johnny Silverhand's owl, why is it here?" Umbridge exclaimed, her voice tinged with panic and confusion. Trelawney, still sobbing, seemed incapable of reading the letter herself. Thus, McGonagall, feeling a sense of duty to see this through, opened the letter addressed to Trelawney from Johnny Silverhand, a name revered in the wizarding world. "Professor Sybil Trelawney, I, Johnny Silverhand, hold you in high esteem as a prophet. The Silverhand Emporium is soon to inaugurate the Illusory Divination Pavilion, and we find ourselves in need of a talented and powerful seer to lead it. Should you accept, we are pleased to offer you the position of Elder, along with all the privileges that come with it. Furthermore, the Silverhand wine cellar will always welcome you, free of charge. Johnny Silverhand." McGonagall read the letter aloud, ensuring every word reached the ears of the gathered crowd. Trelawney's tears ceased as she snatched the letter from McGonagall, her eyes scanning each word, finally resting on the Silverhand emblem. "Impossible! Why would Lord Johnny Silverhand extend an invitation to a fraud?" Umbridge yelled, her voice laced with hysteria. She refused to believe that Johnny Silverhand would consider Trelawney for such a position. Her disbelief was echoed by many, yet the sight of Umbridge's dismay brought a sense of vindication to Trelawney. I accept," Trelawney announced, her voice still quivering with emotion. "Please, convey to Johnny Silverhand my acceptance." "Sybil?" McGonagall hesitated, wanting to encourage Trelawney to stay, confident that Dumbledore would have supported her. However, faced with Trelawney's expulsion, all McGonagall could offer was, "Congratulations, Sybil." Umbridge, unable to mask her frustration, attempted to snatch the letter, desperate to verify its authenticity. The black long-eared owl, clearly displeased by her actions, swiftly pecked at Umbridge's hand, drawing blood. Under normal circumstances, Umbridge would have retaliated with her wand, but facing an owl representing Johnny Silverhand, she dared not act. In that moment, Trelawney's expulsion was not only overturned, but she also emerged victorious, leaving Umbridge humiliated and the onlookers in awe of the unexpected turn of events. Sybil Trelawney, with a swift motion, opened her suitcase, retrieved a pen, and signed her name on the employment letter. In that moment, her identity transformed. She transitioned from being a divination professor at Hogwarts to becoming an elder of the magical divination pavilion. As she finalized her signature, the air was pierced by the sound of neighing horses. A carriage, drawn by 4 flying horses, descended from the sky, escorted by 6 guards mounted on firebolts. A waiter, adorned with long black hair and a mask, disembarked from the carriage and respectfully addressed her. "Elder Trelawney, I have been dispatched to welcome you." The arrival was nothing short of grandiose. A red carpet unfurled from beneath the carriage, extending directly to Trelawney's feet. 6 guards, clad in long black trench coats, stood at attention along the carpet, their eyes sharp with the intensity of seasoned fighters. The spectacle left Trelawney in awe, and even Professor McGonagall was taken aback by the lavish display. The waiter, noticing their astonishment, offered an apologetic explanation. Due to the urgency of the summons, we had to make do with a brief escort. Originally, 10 security guards were planned, but we could only manage 6. Please accept our apologies, Elder. The level of security and opulence was such that even the Minister of Magic would not receive such treatment. The guards were equipped with the elite G series gear, a privilege usually reserved for the Ministry of Magic's top aurors. Overwhelmed by the grandeur, Trelawney felt a rush of vindication. As she moved to collect her luggage, the waiter promptly assisted her, adding, "The Silver Hand wine cellar has prepared 32 bottles of Star Fine Wine for you at the Miracle Divination Pavilion." The Star series from Silver Hand Cellars was renowned for its exorbitance. The Malfoy family, having once lost a bottle, had nearly turned Diagon Alley upside down in search of it. Dazzled by the unexpected luxury, Trelawney was overjoyed. Meanwhile, Dumbledore, having navigated through the crowd to the foyer, was taken aback by the sudden poaching of Trelawney. He had been momentarily distracted and, as a result, Umbridge had managed to dismiss Trelawney from Hogwarts. Regaining his composure, Dumbledore addressed Trelawney with a calm demeanor. "Sybil, you are always welcome back at Hogwarts." Despite her grievances about being expelled, Trelawney appreciated Dumbledore's gesture. She nodded in acknowledgement and settled into the plush interior of the carriage, which boasted velvet cushions as soft as clouds. The long-haired waiter closed the carriage door and bowed towards Dumbledore, signaling that everything was ready. The guards, mounted on their firebolts, a broomstick of choice for World Cup players, formed a protective formation around the carriage. As the carriage ascended, Trelawney departed from Hogwarts, leaving a sense of loss behind. Professor McGonagall approached Dumbledore, her concern evident. "With the dangers that lie outside, why didn't you stop Sybil?" Trelawney's invitation by Johnny Silverhand was suspicious, and the external world posed a significant risk, especially with the threat of Death Eaters. Dumbledore sighed, a mixture of resignation and trust in his voice. "Minerva, Sybil will be safe. Johnny Silverhand will likely protect her more diligently than we could at Hogwarts." His gaze shifted to John in the crowd, pondering the man's motives. Why had John chosen Trelawney? Was he aware of the prophecy she had made during her interview, the prophecy of the Savior born at the end of July? Dumbledore reflected on the significance of that prophecy, which had been partially overheard. The second half remained a secret, known only to him, and unknown even to Trelawney herself. Voldemort's awareness of the prophecy posed a direct threat to Trelawney. Dumbledore had initially intended to intervene, but now he could only hope that Silverhand's protection would suffice. To ensure Professor Trelawney's safety, Dumbledore had initially planned to keep her within the castle's protective embrace, even if she were to be expelled. However, the unexpected arrival of a letter from Johnny Silverhand forced him to reconsider his options. Despite the change in plans, Dumbledore was confident that John Wick, a man known for his deep sense of loyalty and justice, would not allow any harm to come to Trelawney. After all, she had been his teacher, and John valued the bonds he shared with his mentors and friends alike. It was this belief that reassured Dumbledore when he saw the level of protection assigned to Trelawney, 6 Auror-level guards, a force so formidable that even the Death Eaters would hesitate to engage. As the carriage soared beyond Hogwarts' boundaries, the operation to protect Trelawney unfolded with military precision. "The target has been located. Team 1 is moving to escort," announced one of the guards. "Team 2 has completed the ground search," reported another. "Teams 3 and 4 have cleared the surrounding area and neutralized a potential threat," came the updates, one after the other. The man coordinating the operation, a masked figure with long black hair, monitored the progress from the carriage's driver's seat. Removing his mask, he revealed a face marked by a gentle demeanor, a stark contrast to the situation at hand. "This overly cautious plan was Sophie's doing," he mused, shaking his head. Known as Chu Dai, he was one of the children taken in by old Jack and had grown up alongside Sophie, who had a knack for sensing danger. The elaborate security measures were part of a test devised by Johnny Silverhand, with Chu Dai overseeing its execution, and Sophie handling the strategy. "Sophie always plays it safe," Chu Dai reflected, understanding the deeper motive behind their cautious approach. Johnny Silverhand's intention was clear, to present a facade of vulnerability to Dumbledore, thereby lulling him into a false sense of security. Sophie, an ardent admirer of Silverhand, was more than willing to play along, hiding their true strength to manipulate the chessboard from the shadows. Inside the carriage, oblivious to the intricate web of protection woven around her, Professor Trelawney was lost in her own world. She gingerly touched a pure gold cup, only to retract her hand quickly, as if burned by its touch. The contrast between the serene interior of the carriage and the vigilant guard outside underscored the complexity of the situation, a delicate balance between the seen and unseen, the known and the hidden. Chapter 337, The Centaur Professor and Trelawney's Departure. Ron's face was a picture of disbelief. "Our divination professor just vanished?" he asked, still reeling from the shock of Johnny's extravagant gift of 6 firebolts. Harry, struggling to accept the reality himself, nodded. He recalled the sheer joy he felt when he received his firebolt, a gift that led to a brief falling out with Hermione after she expressed her concerns to Professor McGonagall. Since when did firebolts become so trivial? He mused, the situation feeling surreal. Hermione, on the other hand, saw Professor Trelawney's departure as a positive development. She had always felt undervalued by Trelawney and had consequently abandoned the subject. Even Professor McGonagall had reservations about the academic rigor of Trelawney's classes, suggesting her absence might not be a significant loss. Lavender and Parvati, however, were concerned. They were relieved to hear that Trelawney had secured another position, but were dismayed at the prospect of losing their divination class. Fortunately, Dumbledore had a solution. To everyone's surprise, he appointed a centaur as the new divination professor, a decision that infuriated Umbridge. Dumbledore's late arrival was explained when he introduced the centaur, Firenze, whose striking appearance, pale blonde hair and deep blue eyes immediately captivated Parvati. John observed Firenze's entrance, noting the battle scars that marked his chest, a testament to recent conflicts within his herd. Accepting a position among humans, given the centaur's prideful nature, must not have been an easy decision, he thought, watching the scene unfold before deciding to leave. Umbridge's authoritarian approach quickly subdued the rebellious students, who feared they might face the same fate as the dismissed professors. Malfoy, determined not to be remembered as Slytherin's most unsuccessful Quidditch captain, pushed his team to their limits, sometimes to the point of inhumanity. John, meanwhile, received a letter informing him that Trelawney was found inebriated in the magical divination pavilion. Tang Mi questioned John's decision to support Trelawney by opening a divination pavilion, especially given her questionable abilities. John smiled, knowing there was more to Trelawney than met the eye. He valued her not just for her lineage, but for her genuine prophetic talent, despite her occasional lapses into obscurity. The divination pavilion, while appearing to be a conventional establishment, served a unique purpose. It was equipped with numerous crystal balls designed to record any spontaneous prophecies Trelawney might utter. For John, supporting Trelawney was a trivial matter, given his resources. After burning the letter, aware that Dumbledore might probe his thoughts, John remained unfazed, his intentions clear. He then marked a date on his calendar with a red circle, contemplating the days ahead. After drafting a new letter for Basil to deliver, he turned his attention to Tom, his pet, whose teeth had begun to exhibit peculiar changes, resembling sharp serrations. As John examined Tom's teeth, he noted the lack of rejection to the transformation. "Perhaps it's time to find you a test subject," he mused, setting Tom down. Tom responded with a playful gesture, but John, feigning disgust, playfully dodged away. Tom was in a good mood, so John decided to head to the Slytherin common room. Upon entering, he instinctively picked up a cup from the table and took a sip of water, his gaze casually drifting over to a group of third-year boys engrossed in their reading. Among them was Pansy's boyfriend, who seemed to enjoy a certain popularity among his peers. Meanwhile, Astoria had gone to watch Malfoy's Quidditch practice, with Daphne tagging along to keep an eye on her sister. John mused that if Astoria were to cause any trouble, it would likely be Malfoy who bore the brunt of it. After all, it was unlikely for a sister to target her own sibling, leaving Malfoy as the unfortunate scapegoat. After setting his cup down, Joe stood up, feeling a sudden dizziness as if he were hypoglycemic. "I wonder when we'll eat," he muttered to himself before leaving the lounge. By noon, John noticed Pansy and Daphne approaching. "Make sure he doesn't touch my things again," Daphne said sternly, to which Pansy apologized profusely. Curious, John inquired, "What happened?" "It's Pansy's inconsiderate boyfriend," Daphne replied, visibly upset. "He tampered with my kitchen utensils." John, puzzled, asked, "Why was he even in the kitchen?" Pansy, looking embarrassed, explained, "He's into photography and wanted to capture the house elves at work." "So you let him into my private space?" Daphne's glare intensified. Pansy, bound by numerous promises, could only offer apologies on behalf of her boyfriend. Daphne was livid, her anger not easily quelled. "No one is allowed to touch my kitchen utensils. They're reserved for John's cooking," she declared, her voice echoing through the room. Pansy nudged Goyle, hoping he could mediate the situation. Goyle, in turn, nudged Crabbe, who then nudged Malfoy. Given Malfoy and Pansy's long-standing friendship, he attempted to smooth things over with Daphne, only to be rebuffed. "Okay, Daphne," John intervened, "let's sit down and eat." Daphne complied, and Pansy silently celebrated the successful pacification. This incident only served to reinforce Astoria's determination. If her sister's whims continued to cause discord, the Greengrass family would never find peace. After enjoying the meal prepared by Daphne, John elegantly wiped his mouth. "Draco, join me at the Star Club after dinner," he instructed Malfoy before standing up. As he rose, he accidentally knocked over his cup. Normally, John's reflexes would have prevented the spill, but this time, the glass shattered on the floor. Concerned, Malfoy looked up at John. "It's okay," John reassured, quickly picking up the pieces and exiting the dining hall. Dumbledore and Snape, having observed the incident, exchanged knowing glances. At the Star Club, John meticulously mixed a test tube containing blood and a clear liquid. As the substances combined, they eventually settled into a dark layer at the bottom. Just then, Malfoy entered. "I need you to do something for me, Draco," John said, turning to face him. Malfoy, preoccupied with his hair, paused and asked, "What do you need?" "Write a letter to your mother. Ask her when Mr. K's meeting is scheduled," John instructed. "Mr. K?" Malfoy looked puzzled. "Since when does my mother know him?" "You're not privy to all your mother's acquaintances," John replied. "Just write the letter and inform me once you receive a reply." Malfoy agreed, albeit reluctantly, expressing concern that Voldemort, who was staying at his house, might intercept the letter. "Your mother will handle it," John assured him, dispelling his worries. After Malfoy sent the letter, John returned his attention to the test tube, now observing the liquid's transformation to black. Holding the test tube with a thoughtful expression, he remarked, "Sometimes the simplest plans are the most effective." Carefully, he concealed the test tube from view, ensuring that no one could spot it. Chapter 338, Firenze and the Divination Classroom. Today was the day for divination class, and Firenze, appointed by Dumbledore as the new professor, had already garnered a significant following due to his striking appearance. Malfoy, always one to stir trouble, approached John with a question that was both curious and slightly offensive. "John, do you think centaurs prefer the company of horses or humans?" John, having once pondered the same, simply redirected him, suggesting he ask someone from Gryffindor to pose such an impertinent question. At breakfast, Daphne attempted to cook again, resulting in something that tasted remarkably like Hagrid's infamous rock cakes. Despite the challenging texture, John mused that he should perhaps inform Hagrid not to be overly confident in his culinary skills. It seemed Daphne was venturing into the realm of what could only be described as Western dark cuisine. When it was time for divination, John made his way to the newly relocated classroom on the first floor, a change made to accommodate Firenze's inability to climb stairs. Upon entering, John was transported into what seemed like an enchanted woodland. The classroom had been transformed into a glade, with soft moss underfoot and branches laden with lush foliage creating a canopy above. Dappled green light filled the space, casting everything in an ethereal glow. Finding a spot against a tree trunk, John settled down just as Firenze, the centaur professor, approached him. After a brief exchange where Firenze mentioned John's previous encounters with the centaurs it was clear that there was a mutual respect, albeit tinged with the complexities of their respective positions within the magical community. As the class began, Firenze openly shared his expulsion from his herd, sparking curiosity among the students. Dean, Harry's roommate, inquired awkwardly if Hagrid fed Firenze as he did the Thestrals, a question that highlighted the often misunderstood nature of centaurs. Firenze, with remarkable patience, clarified that centaurs were neither servants nor pets of humans, emphasizing their independence and dignity. Parvati, seizing the opportunity, raised her hand to ask a question, demonstrating the students' keen interest in learning more about Firenze and the centaur way of life. The class was not just an educational experience, but also a bridge between two worlds, offering insights into the rich tapestry of magical creatures coexisting within the wizarding world. John was increasingly curious about why Firenze had been exiled. It turned out that Firenze's exile was a consequence of his decision to work for Dumbledore. After briefly touching on this sensitive topic, Firenze quickly shifted the focus to the day's lesson. With a simple gesture, he transformed the classroom atmosphere. The lights dimmed, and the ceiling became a canvas of stars, creating a mesmerizing scene. John, however, seemed unimpressed and barely opened his eyes, even as exclamations of awe filled the room around him. Ron couldn't contain his excitement and shouted out loud, prompting Firenze to instruct the class to lie down for a better view of the stars. This approach to learning was a stark contrast to Professor Trelawney's methods. Firenze's mention of Mars shining brightly as a harbinger of impending war added a layer of urgency to the lesson. The class also involved burning sage and observing the resulting smoke, making the experience both interactive and engaging. Even Lavender and Parvati, staunch supporters of Trelawney, found themselves captivated by Firenze's teaching. After the class, Harry noticed that Firenze had asked him and Ron to stay behind. Firenze's question about Harry's friendship with Hagrid led to a cryptic warning about Hagrid's current endeavors being futile. Despite Harry's curiosity, Firenze refused to elaborate, citing respect for Hagrid's privacy. However, Firenze's ominous warning about John being too dangerous left Harry and Ron bewildered. The notion that John could be more dangerous than any creature they had encountered was both alarming and intriguing. As Harry and Ron pondered Firenze's words, they couldn't help but question the nature of the danger John supposedly represented. Ron's rare, insightful comment highlighted their complicated relationship with John, who had become an enigmatic figure within their circle. The day's events soon faded into the background as they attended Hagrid's Care of Magical Creatures class. Hagrid's evident concern over his job security, especially after Professor Trelawney's dismissal, cast a shadow over the lesson. John tried to offer reassurance, but Hagrid's pessimism was palpable. Umbridge's presence, coupled with her obvious disdain for Hagrid and John's conversation, underscored the tense atmosphere. John's attempt to comfort Hagrid highlighted his empathy and understanding of the precarious situation they all faced under Umbridge's scrutiny. Despite the challenges, John's presence and support provided a glimmer of hope in an otherwise uncertain time. In the small, cramped hut, John was yelling, frustrated that he had forgotten to bring the book back. Malfoy, ever the opportunist to mock, sneered and said, "Look at him, prancing around like a ridiculous star." The fact that even Malfoy could critique his acting skills was a testament to how dreadful they must be. All John could manage in his defense was that he had at least tried to open his eyes to the reality of his situation. In certain aspects, Neville had a distinct advantage over John. For instance, at this moment, Neville, with Marvolo's sword in hand, stood before the doors that welcomed each student. The red gemstones embedded in the hilt of the sword shone brightly, casting an aura of determination and courage around him. Neville's grip on the sword tightened as he glanced at the doors, each opening to reveal eager students ready to learn and grow. Unlike John, who often found himself tangled in trivial matters, Neville seemed to embody a sense of purpose and readiness that set him apart. The contrast between John's frantic demeanor in the hut and Neville's composed readiness was stark. While John was caught up in his forgetfulness and the mockery it invited, Neville was focused on the path ahead, the sword in his hand, a symbol of his resolve and the challenges he was prepared to face. As the doors continued to open, welcoming the students into the world of magic and learning, Neville's stance remained unwavering. The shining red gemstones on Marvolo's sword seemed to reflect his inner strength and the silent promise of the adventures and trials that lay ahead. Chapter 339, Neville and the Room of Requirement. Today marked another gathering of Dumbledore's army, and Neville had arrived early, eager with anticipation. He had witnessed Harry pacing back and forth 3 times before a door materialized, revealing the Room of Requirement. After the meeting, as the last member exited and the door vanished, Neville found himself alone in front of the blank wall. Mimicking Harry, he walked back and forth 3 times, yet no door appeared. Confused, he tried again with the same result. "Why isn't it working?" Neville wondered aloud. "I just want to enter the room like before." On his next attempt, he paused thoughtfully before the door finally appeared. Surprised but undeterred, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room transformed into a practice area, complete with 10 human-shaped targets marked for spellcasting. Neville felt a twinge of guilt, as if he were intruding, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He explored the room, even inspecting the bookshelves, yet the sword of Marvolo, which had briefly glowed upon his entry, remained dim. Puzzled, Neville stepped outside, only to notice the gem on the sword light up with each passage. After several tests with consistent results, he realized the room responded to his thoughts at the moment of entry. Pondering this revelation, Neville waited for the door to vanish before attempting to enter again. This time, he focused his thoughts on finding a specific place. "I need a place where I can find things," he muttered. The door that appeared led him to a room filled with mirrors, not what he was searching for. The sword of Marvolo flickered again, confirming his mistake. He exited and prepared for another attempt when he was startled by a cry of surprise from nearby. "Oops, Filch! He found us! Run away!" The voices of 2 Gryffindors echoed down the corridor, followed by Filch's menacing reply. Neville, realizing the urgency, abandoned his experiment and hurried towards the Gryffindor tower. Just in time, he slipped through the portrait hole, narrowly avoiding Filch, who seemed to have inexplicably moved from the 7th to the 8th floor in mere moments. "John shouldn't have given him those shoes," Neville muttered to himself, a hint of regret in his voice. Upon returning to the dormitory, Harry inquired, "Neville, where have you been?" "Just out for a walk," Neville replied evasively. Ron expressed hope that Neville hadn't encountered Filch, to which Neville admitted a near miss, his voice tinged with fear. This confession sparked a lively discussion about Filch's surprising agility, with theories ranging from sudden magical abilities to the influence of enchanted shoes. Throughout the conversation, Neville remained tight-lipped about John's involvement with Filch's footwear, marveling silently at John's ability to connect with even the most challenging individuals. The following day, Neville's curiosity led him back to the 8th floor, determined to master the Room of Requirement. With a focused mind, he paced back and forth 3 times, ready to uncover its secrets. Neville had made a decision. "I need a place to hide my belongings." He paced back and forth 3 times, and as if by magic, a door materialized before him. Gripping the sword tightly, Neville pushed the door open. This time, the gem set into the hilt of Marvolo's sword glowed a brilliant red. He had succeeded. Meanwhile, at the Slytherin table, Malfoy handed a letter to John, his curiosity piqued. Why hasn't Neville been around lately? He scanned the Gryffindor table, but Neville was nowhere to be seen. "Neville's preoccupied with something," John replied, opening the letter. The message inside read, "Mr. K is currently indisposed due to certain circumstances." John sighed inwardly. The situation was indeed troublesome. "Who's this Mr. K?" Malfoy inquired, his confusion evident. "Just think of a friend whose name starts with K," John suggested nonchalantly. Malfoy's thoughts briefly turned to Crabbe, but he quickly dismissed the idea. After all, Crabbe was at school. Why would he need to contact his mother? Frustrated and unable to come up with an answer, Malfoy eventually gave up. Regardless, he trusted John not to involve his family in anything harmful. "Crabbe, Goyle, let's go," he called to his companions, ready to start their daily routine of taunting the Gryffindor students. John paid little attention to Malfoy's antics. Despite Malfoy's flaws, he knew him to be a person of certain principles, arrogant yet restrained, malicious without resorting to curses. In John's view, everyone was entitled to pursue their own version of happiness. As John flipped through the Daily Prophet, he chuckled at the latest headline. The Ministry of Magic holds Gringotts accountable for illegally breeding fire dragons. The accompanying photo showed a goblin from Gringotts with a look of disdain. Clever move by old Barty, John mused. Initially, Gringotts had sought compensation from the ministry for damages, but the tables had turned. Now, not only was the ministry exempt from paying, but Gringotts was also fined for its unlawful activities. Daphne, sitting nearby, expressed her astonishment. I knew my father mentioned Crouch, but I never expected him to pull something like this. It's clear the goblins were in the wrong. If they hadn't been meddling, Crouch wouldn't have had to intervene. John remarked, turning the page to find the winner of the new Galleon Award listed. The allure of the Galleon Award was undeniable, captivating both muggles and wizards alike with the dream of sudden wealth. Consequently, even those who typically ignored the newspaper made it a point to purchase a copy, especially since all proceeds from the Galleon Award were donated to the Little Wizard Fund, a silver lining that allowed many to justify their participation. Across the table, Lee Jordan's voice could be heard lamenting, I was just one number away. The Weasley twins shared a laugh, recalling a time when they too had come close to winning. Unfortunately, their potential winnings had been minimal compared to the current jackpot, which had grown significantly. The temptation to cheat for the prize was strong, but those caught attempting to do so found themselves facing time in Azkaban. Daphne's conversation with John was interrupted by Pansy's dejected exclamation, No luck. Puzzled, Daphne inquired, When did you buy a ticket? Just a few days ago, Pansy murmured, avoiding Daphne's gaze. Why would you even buy one? Daphne asked, perplexed. Pansy was certainly not lacking in funds. Pansy's guilt intensified under Daphne's questioning gaze. Astoria, picking up on the tension, accused she spent all her money on that boyfriend of hers. Daphne was taken aback. What? How much did you spend on him? Pansy defensively claimed, You don't understand, he's a very serious student. Daphne's frustration boiled over. Don't let him deceive you, she warned. Pansy, however, remained stubborn. He wouldn't lie to me, she insisted. Daphne was furious, eager to confront the man who had misled her friend, but Pansy held her back. The situation was infuriatingly complicated. Daphne complained to John, I can't believe how she's acting, all because of that guy. John responded casually, Pansy has her own agenda. Understanding someone truly requires seeing them through your own eyes, not just hearing about them. Upon hearing this, Daphne realized the wisdom in his words. She nodded, acknowledging that perhaps she had been too quick to judge based on hearsay rather than her own observations and understanding. Chapter 340, Dumbledore's Army and the Informer. The period of the OWL exams brought with it an overwhelming burden of academic tasks. This, coupled with Professor Umbridge's relentless pressure, led to a breaking point for many students. Some were even seen breaking down in tears amidst their studies. Draco Malfoy, observing Hannah Abbott being escorted away after a breakdown, commented with disdain, Some people just can't handle the pressure. John, who had been silently observing the scene, turned to Malfoy and remarked, You weren't exactly the picture of composure at the Homping Willow yourself. You cried too. Caught off guard, and unable to mask his embarrassment, Malfoy's face twitched slightly. John, however, didn't dwell on the moment. He understood that everyone has their own battles with pressure. The atmosphere among the fifth years was notably tense. Hilda, in an attempt to lighten the mood, occasionally brought in high-end candies from acquaintances of hers. These treats were meant to alleviate some of the stress, and she also organized stress relief training sessions. John, recognizing the logo on the candy wrappers, had a hunch about the generous benefactor behind them. After one particularly grueling class, John encountered Neville Longbottom at the Star Club. Neville, looking as if he were preparing for battle, was cautiously handling a foul-smelling box. The sword of Gryffindor in his grasp was pointed at the box, its ruby glowing intensely. "What have you found there?" John inquired, noticing the tension in Neville's posture. "In a room on the 8th floor. That thing." It tries to influence people. Be careful." Neville warned as John approached the box. John reassured Neville with a gesture and proceeded to open the box. Inside lay a sparkling diadem adorned with gemstones. Upon closer inspection, John found an inscription at the base of the crown. "Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest wealth of mankind." He recognized it immediately as Ravenclaw's diadem, rumored to enhance the wisdom of its wearer. However, the diadem before him had been corrupted, turned into a Horcrux by Voldemort, and was emitting a hissing sound reminiscent of Parseltongue attempting to influence John. Fortunately, John's resolve was unshakable. Neville's resistance to the diadem's influence was a testament to the healing John had facilitated for Neville's parents. With his family's well-being restored, Neville's spirit was unburdened by resentment or despair. As John extended his hand towards the diadem, dark tendrils emerged from his fingertips. The crown let out a soul-piercing shriek, causing Neville to stagger. Clutching his sword, Neville looked on in agony. "John, what do we do?" "Just a moment, Neville." John reassured him as he wrapped the dark tendrils around the diadem. "It's over now." Neville, covering his ears in shock, exclaimed, "You did it." John had developed a unique spell, the Soul-Eating Curse, specifically designed to counteract Horcruxes. This spell allowed him to subdue the fragment of Voldemort's soul within the diadem without destroying the artifact itself. "It's similar to the situation with the Golden Cup," John mused, storing away the now inert diadem. He pondered the nature of the Horcruxes, particularly the possibility of interaction between the soul fragments contained within them. Unlike the more sentient Horcruxes, like the diary, the cup and the diadem had remained hidden, their true natures obscured. John was intrigued by the potential dynamics between these fragments of Voldemort's soul. With the diadem secured, John reflected on the significance of preserving such historical artifacts. The relics of Hogwarts' founders, including the Sword of Gryffindor and Slytherin's locket, held immense value beyond their enchantments. As John contemplated the future of these artifacts, Harry Potter felt a growing sense of urgency. The discovery of the diadem and the ongoing struggle against Umbridge's tyranny underscored the importance of their resistance. Dumbledore's army, now more than ever, needed to stand united against the dark forces threatening their world. Without the clandestine training sessions of Dumbledore's army, DA, Harry would have found himself deeply disheartened. Under the watchful and malevolent gaze of Professor Umbridge, every day was a challenge to keep one's wits sharp and avoid trouble. Yet, Harry harbored a secret hope that seeing all DA members excel in defense against the dark arts would wipe the smugness off Umbridge's face. Today marked the beginning of their practice on the Patronus charm, a spell of such complexity that even some Aurors lacked proficiency in it. Professor Hild had never even considered introducing such an advanced spell to fifth-year students. With the Easter break looming, this lesson was their last opportunity for a while. Harry, with Cho Chang vividly in his mind, took the lead in explaining the intricacies of the spell. He emphasized that while mastering the Patronus charm was crucial for self-protection, its effectiveness would ultimately depend on their ability to apply it under real-world conditions. The classroom, bathed in bright light, buzzed with excitement as students filled their minds with joyous memories, essential for conjuring a Patronus. However, the true test lay in whether these conjurations would hold against a real Dementor. Cho Chang's Patronus, a majestic swan, emerged, drawing envious gazes, particularly from Lavender, whose attempt resulted only in a silver mist. Hermione's Patronus, an otter, added to the diverse array of magical creatures filling the room. The atmosphere was one of joy and camaraderie until an unexpected visitor shattered the peace. Dobby, his eyes wide with panic, burst into the room. Unable to speak directly due to his status as a house elf, he conveyed a sense of urgent danger. Harry, piecing together Dobby's frantic gestures, realized the grim truth. Umbridge had been tipped off and was on her way. The room plunged into chaos as Harry's shout to flee sent everyone scattering in a desperate bid for escape. But their efforts were in vain. As the door swung open, they were greeted not by freedom, but by the sight of Umbridge, seated comfortably, her pink attire clashing grotesquely with her surroundings. A Slytherin boy by her side gleefully captured their defeated faces on camera. Escape was futile. The captured members of DA found themselves detained in a classroom, Umbridge presiding over them with a sinister glee. She toyed with a slender quill, a tool Harry knew all too well from painful experience. The atmosphere was oppressive, each desk equipped with one of those dreaded quills. Umbridge's interrogation began, her target clear. She sought to pin the blame on Harry as the ringleader. Despite Hannah Abbott's tearful denials and Hermione's quick thinking, Umbridge's tactics were unyielding. She demanded they write lines, a punishment that seemed innocuous until the true nature of the quills became apparent. As Seamus defiantly began to write, a sense of dread spread through the room. The realization dawned on them all too late. These were no ordinary quills. The pain and the scars they would leave behind were a testament to Umbridge's cruelty, a stark reminder of their helplessness under her regime. In this moment of despair, solidarity among the DA members became their only solace. Harry and Ron exchanged determined glances, a silent agreement forming between them. They would not give Umbridge the satisfaction of turning on one another. Despite the looming threat of expulsion, they stood united, a defiant stand against the tyranny of Umbridge's rule. As the students painstakingly etched words into their own flesh, the marks appeared as if carved directly into their skin. Meanwhile, Dolores Umbridge sat in her chair, an unsettling semblance of serenity on her face, as if she were attending a concert. With her eyes closed, she seemed to savor the symphony of their suffering. The room was filled with the sounds of pain. Some students broke down into sobs, unable to bear the agony, while others gritted their teeth, enduring the torment in silence. In the midst of this cruel spectacle, the classroom door swung open, revealing none other than Albus Dumbledore. The sudden appearance of the headmaster brought an abrupt end to Umbridge's twisted enjoyment. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably as Dumbledore's presence filled the space, his aura of authority and concern palpable. Dumbledore's eyes swept across the room, taking in the scene before him. His gaze lingered on the students, noting their distress and the visible marks of their punishment. There was a moment of heavy silence, the kind that speaks volumes, as Dumbledore's disappointment and disapproval hung in the air. Without a word, Dumbledore stepped further into the room, his every move watched closely by both Umbridge and the students. The tension was palpable, a silent battle of wills between the headmaster and the professor who had brought such suffering upon her students. In that moment, it was clear that a confrontation was inevitable. Dumbledore, with his unwavering commitment to the well-being of his students, stood as a beacon of hope and resistance against the darkness that Umbridge represented. The stage was set for a clash of ideals, a battle for the soul of Hogwarts itself.